Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it. Thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description.
Cracked Mask by Denim88. Hueco Mundo. Home of vicious and horrendous souls called hollows. Then he became one of them. Naruto will prove that even as a hollow, life is determined by one's own beliefs and shake the foundation of the spiritual world as a result. I don't own anything. Adios.
That Ryotsu is Ulquiorra's, Grimmjow growled. That bastard's hidden this much strength all along? Naruto shook his head. Hell if I know. The two Arrancar were quickly approaching the tower where Ichigo and the Quattro Espada were apparently duking it out. No more than 5 minutes running distance behind the duo was where the others were fighting off the remaining low-level hollows that Aizen had sent out as a distraction before he and the remaining Espada left. Damn it, Ulquiorra is increasing his power. Naruto grumbled as they halted in front of the tower. Grimmjow. Is that seriously Ulquiorra? I mean, he's number 4, but… I know, Grimmjow replied, Kurisaki's in over his head. All the while, Naruto felt a tugging sensation in the back of his mind. The others were slowly making their way towards the tower as well, though it'd likely be another 10 minutes or so before they were near enough that they could be in danger of getting pulled into the fight. The two jettisoned into the air again, going at a straight 90-degree angle to the ground. Naruto gripped his blade by the hilt. Grimmjow, any idea on what powers Ulquiorra has? Nope. That's a shame. The media Espada groaned. Looks like we'll have to go about this in the old, hope for the best, manner then, huh? Isn't that the only method you ever use? The blue-haired Espada inquired sarcastically, only to receive a cocky grin from Naruto. Right. Don't worry, we got Ulquiorra outnumbered 3-1. One of us is bound to get a lucky hit on him. Let's hope so. A sudden rush of Ryotsu smashed into the two with the force of tidal wave. Naruto felt his breath hitch for a moment, looking up in time to see a light erupt from the top of the tower. Holy she! Grimmjow's words were cut off as the roof directly above them was blasted clean off, leaving a large, gaping hole in its place. The eternal night sky of Hueco Mundo was visible now to them, but Naruto's attention was set on something else entirely. That's Ulquiorra's resurrección. The blonde felt his hand tighten around his hilt again. We had to hurry, now. Ichigo strained to keep his stance as the overwhelming weight of Ulquiorra's spiritual pressure threatened to crush him. He grit his teeth. So, this is your released state, huh? Correct. Ulquiorra replied, it's against the will of Aizen for the first 4 Espada to release their resurrección while inside Las Noches. That is why I release my power outside of the palace's walls. TCH, it looked more like you were showing off to me, with the way you blasted that hole in the roof. Ichigo remarked, a fitting name for your resurrección, by the way. Still confident in your abilities, I see. The Quattro spoke, it seems I'll have to show you just how great the difference in our powers is. Ichigo lifted a hand in front of his face, calling forth his mask. Go ahead and try, Ulquiorra. That's my intention, Ichigo Kurosaki. Ulquiorra replied, I'll take all that confidence and hope you have, and destroy it. You'll be nothing more than ashes at my feet when I am through with you. Another explosion resonated from the hole in the roof above Naruto and Grimmjow. The two stopped, standing on the top of the tower. Ichigo's not going to last 5 minutes at this rate. Grimmjow snorted in laughter. 5? That's pretty generous. Alright, we need to attack quickly and make sure we don't give Ulquiorra a chance to get back up. Naruto drew his blade. You're better at firing a high-speed Sero than I am. Catch him by surprise, and I'll go in for the attack if he withstands the Sero. Close-ranged attack against an Espada with their resurrección while you're not releasing your own powers? Grimmjow sighed. You're going to get yourself killed. You know that, right? It's possible, but he'll be less likely to notice me if I have my powers suppressed. If I strike with enough force in that brief moment that he's open to attack, I can pierce his hierro, regardless of how strong it may be. The blonde's facial features showed no traces of humor or joking. Grimmjow, if for some reason I mess up and get myself killed, get Ichigo out of there with a Garganta. We've got 4 captains below us. That should be more than enough to take on Ulquiorra if I fail to. You know, I'm getting sick of you and your, if I get killed, speeches. The SXTA commented, maybe if you actually had a backbone and quit doubting yourself, you'd actually do things right. Naruto grinned a bit. Love you too, Grimmjow. Bite me. Grimmjow replied as the two flew towards the hole in the roof above them. No more than several seconds passed when the two landed on the roof. The scene before them sent a mild chill down Naruto's spine. Ichigo was standing near a pile of debris, straining to stand up as another figure slowly approached him. From the feeling of their Ryotsu, Naruto could only assume that it was none other than Ulquiorra. Damn it, Grimmjow, we've got to stop him. Naruto got into a ready stance. Ready? Grimmjow cut his palm open with the edge of his blade, aiming it towards the Quattro, Gran Rey Sero. An eruption of blue light surged out of the SX's hand, its pathway leading straight to Ulquiorra. Naruto didn't waste a second, disappearing and racing directly behind the super-powered Sero. As the projectile hit its target, the blonde shot through the blazing waves of energy and smoke, Zanpakuto pointing forward. Clang! Naruto felt resistance as he held his blade before him. He looked to see the figure of Ulquiorra standing before him, the strange spear he was holding blocking the blonde's blade. You honestly believed that such an attack would work on me, Uzumaki? Naruto's eyes met with Ulquiorra's. I had hoped to maybe get a lucky hit on you while Grimmjow got Ichigo out of harm's way. The kid's probably one of the few trump cards we have against Aizen if what Kazuki Urahara told me was true. The media Espada jumped back as he took in the Quattro Espada's features. Overall, there wasn't much of a physical change. Aside from the giant bat-like wings he now had, along with the horns on his hollow mask remains becoming longer. Naruto cast a quick glance to the slightly shaken form of Ichigo. Kurosaki, stay back until you're capable of actually using that sword in your hands. Ichigo didn't miss the slightly annoyed tone of Naruto's voice, as though he were scolding the boy. Grimmjow, let me handle this. Ulquiorra scoffed a bit. You stand no chance against the powers of Murcielago. He held his spear at ready. My orders, however, were to ensure that anyone who attempted to save that woman are to be dealt with according. Hey, Naruto chuckled. I'll be honest, Ulquiorra, I'm glad this is happening. I've been wanting to give you a beating since day one. Your dreary outlook on existence is depressing, and you seriously believe that unless you've witnessed something that it cannot exist. Of course. My eyes miss nothing, Uzumaki. I have yet to see you fight me, and as such, I don't see there being a way of you, a lower-ranked Arrancar, to defeat me in battle. Naruto's smirk disappeared, being replaced with a grim expression. Looks like I'll have to convince you then, won't I? He lifted his sword into the air as his eyes began to leak crimson into the irises. Ravage, Rey de Zoros. Nell's first thought as she opened her eyes was that she was in Las Noches. She looked around to see that the others that had been with her earlier when they were fighting were gone. She sensed several Ryotsu signatures, among them being Sakura, Renji, Chad, Uryu, and a few others she wasn't familiar with. You're Nell, am I correct? The green-haired Arrancar turned to look behind her. The voice belonged to a woman bearing the Shinigami captain's haori. She had her hair in braid that ran down the front of her body, and a sword tied around her waist. Yes, you're a Shinigami captain. The woman nodded, offering her a small smile. I'm Retsu Unohana, captain of the 4th division of the looked ahead to where Nell assumed the others were fighting, that media Espada. Naruto. He wanted me to tell you that he went on ahead to help Ichigo fight against an enemy. He left with another Arrancar. He had blue hair and was rather loud. That would be Grimmjow. Nell said, rubbing her head. I take it you healed me? Yes, I did. Don't worry about it. It's my duty as a member of the 4th division to heal the injured. Unohana offered the former Tercera a hand, helping her to her feet. Thank you anyway, Unohana-san. She turned towards the direction of the numerous sources of spiritual energy. I need to find Naruto. Unohana nodded. I will accompany you. The others are ahead of us anyway, so I would prefer to be close in case any of them are injured. Nell gave a smile before they both blurred away, heading towards the battle and hopefully to where Naruto would be. Naruto shot several bala from his 2 hands as Ulquiorra avoided them effortlessly. The orbs of energy crashed into the roof of Las Noches, sending up further debris. Cursing the elusive Arrancar, the blonde shot down to face the Quattro in close combat. Sparks were created as the blades on Naruto's forearms met with the spear in Ulquiorra's hand. The Espada seemed relatively unaffected by Naruto's powerful assault. Ulquiorra's spear narrowly missed Naruto's head, several strands of blonde hair fluttering into the air as the media Espada moved to the side. Ulquiorra was fast and powerful, and despite Naruto's incredible skill in the art of combat, he wasn't able to make a dent in the Quattro's defense. The blonde spun around several times, tail slamming against the spear, but never making contact with Ulquiorra. Grimmjow had taken up, with reluctance, the task of keeping Ichigo from running back into battle right away. The SXTA wasn't clear on the details, but he remembered some time ago that Naruto explained that Kazuki said there was something important about the guy. TCH, yeah right. Grimmjow thought aloud. The blue-haired Arrancar watched as his longtime friend and comrade managed to score a kick to Ulquiorra's gut, sending him into the roof of the gargantuan palace. He had been planning on jumping in and helping Naruto out, but it looked like the usually idiotic Arrancar had things under control for once. How the hell is he able to keep up with Ulquiorra? Ichigo spoke as he rested, sword resting at his side. Grimmjow gave the teen a brief glance before returning his gaze to Naruto. He's good at reading opponents. I doubt he's really able to keep up with Ulquiorra that well, but he's fought so damn much that he got an uncanny sense of being able to detect where the enemy will strike next. Ichigo nodded. I wasn't prepared for that much power. You don't say? Grimmjow gave Ichigo a mocking grin. Figures. It's a damn shame we never got finished with our fight. If you're having trouble against Ulquiorra, I doubt you'll be much of a problem for me, haha. Ichigo didn't retort, instead looking ahead. His eyes didn't leave the floating figure of Naruto, Ulquiorra. Something tells me there's more to him than what he's showing us. Meanwhile, Naruto was taking a brief moment to catch his breath as the Quadra got back to his feet. Still think that I'm weak, Ulquiorra? Ulquiorra simply blinked, his face portraying no emotions. You have yet to see what I'm capable of, Uzumaki. Naruto smirked. I suppose the same can be said for me. Within the blink of an eye, the two were clashing once more, four of Naruto's tails jutting forward to impale the Quadra in the chest. Ulquiorra caught one of the tails, and quickly spun the media espada around once before throwing him to the roof. Naruto landed hard, rolling to his feet and hopping to the side as Ulquiorra's spear nicked the side of his abdominal area. Damn it, I can't get a solid hit on him as long as he keeps moving this fast, Naruto thought. He channeled energy into his hands. I can't afford to let him win this fight though. I have to get Ichigo and the others to Karakura. Kazuki and the others are depending on us. Naruto blasted a Sero from his palm, and as expected, Ulquiorra managed to dodge it with ease. Naruto sighed, realizing his initial released state wouldn't be enough for this fight. He could defend and attempt to attack better than Ichigo could, sure, but Ulquiorra's released state was like fighting Stark for the blonde. No matter how strong Naruto was, it was useless without speed to back it up. Looks like I have to raise the bar then. Naruto took in a deep breath, and closed his eyes. A sudden weight fell upon the area, and even Ulquiorra felt an uneasy feeling rise up inside him. Rey de Zoros. Naruto cried out, his voice echoing through the eternal night of Hueco Mundo, Safety Makola. A beam of light shot into the skies, coloring the area in blood red. Ichigo could only watch in a mix of awe and mild terror as he felt the blonde's Ryotsu double. The haze died down, the red light dying down and revealing a slightly more muscular Naruto, seven tails waving behind him. What did he do? Ichigo asked, looking to Grimmjow. Safety Makola. Grimmjow replied, looking to the two combatants. Naruto's resurrection has varying degrees of power. Naruto's power increases with each tail that he calls upon. So, how many tails can he call upon? Grimmjow shook his head. Hell if I know. Naruto used to have difficulty using 5 tails. Now he starts out in his 6-tails state when he calls upon his Zanpakuto. The two were silent once more as they watched the two fighters stare each other down. I see. Ulquiorra closed his eyes. It seems I misjudged you, Uzumaki. You've been hiding behind the illusion of a lax and carefree identity, but in truth. Ulquiorra's eyes opened as his own Ryotsu began to skyrocket. You're a bigger threat than I thought. Naruto growled as he felt Ulquiorra's power begin to press down on him. Bastard. You've been holding back too, huh? Yes. Ulquiorra replied. Now, I will crush any shred of hope you still have. I will show you what true despair is, Uzumaki. Naruto felt his throat tighten as the power began to intensify. The air was so dense with Ryotsu that he could have cut a knife through it. What's he up to? I've never felt such an intense Ryotsu like this before. It's around that of Harabelle's released state. Naruto cursed under his breath. This is going to get ugly. An aura that was pitch black swirled around Ulquiorra before it dispersed. Naruto's eyes widened as he felt his body begin to break out into a cold sweat. So you understand what I'm saying, Uzumaki? Ulquiorra began, revealing a new form. This is true despair. Lay your eyes upon a power that not even Aizen-sama has knowledge of. There before Naruto stood the strange and new form that the Quadra had taken. Ulquiorra's wings and horns were still there, but he had gone through some radical changes. Black fur covered his arms and from the waist down as well. His feet were talons, and his hollow hole had enlarged and seemed to be leaking a black, blood-like liquid. The tear lines that had run down his face had changed to a black color and increased in length. His coat that he once wore was now gone. Naruto also took note of a long, flexible tail was also swishing back and forth behind the Quadra. Naruto looked into the now yellow eyes of the Quadra. What the hell? This, Uzumaki, is my segunda etapa. For you to have come this far says much about you as a warrior. A single, clawed hand pointed at Naruto. However, you shall also be one of the first of these weaklings to die by this form's hands as well. A black sphere formed in front of the Quadra's index finger. Naruto had barely a second to react, raising his tails in front of him as a black-colored beam of raw energy shot straight at him. The blonde could feel his armor beginning to chip away. He had to end this quick. RRRAAAAGGGGH. The black beam was dissipated as Naruto blasted a wave of crimson from his entire being. Surrounding him in a fig quickly faded and the 7-tailed Arankar landed on the roof. A black-colored Sero. I never thought they existed. The Sero Iskuras is my signature ability. While I could have used it in my previous form, it would have been a waste of energy while fighting you, even in your 6-tailed form. He lowered his hand, which had still been smoking from the blast it had shot. However, looking at your armored tails, and the fact that you resorted to unleashing a volatile wave of spiritual power like that, I'm assuming that you were damaged by my Sero. Wow, nothing escapes you, does it? Naruto shot back sarcastically. Looks like you can back up that stuck-up attitude of yours after all. Naruto flexed his wrists, and his blades extended. Let's see how well you can keep up with me, shall we? The roof exploded as the two were blocking each other's attacks. Ulquiorra had Naruto's wrists in either hand while Naruto had a knee blocking one of Ulquiorra's knees. The two quickly let go of each other, Naruto dashing forward less than a second later and attempting to clobber the Quadra in the jaw. Ulquiorra faded from view just as the media espada was about to make contact. The media espada's hairs stood up on end as he felt a presence from behind. He spun around and raised his wrist blades just as Ulquiorra's powerful tails smashed into them. A jarring pain ran down the blonde's arms, but he shrugged it off. You know, Ulquiorra, I'd say we're about even right now. You still don't realize it, do you? Apparently not. Enlighten me. The blonde retorted, a smirk on his face. There is no way for you to win this battle. Ulquiorra spoke, eyes narrowing. Ulquiorra's tail flew forward a second time, wrapping around Naruto's left leg. Naruto's battle reflexes kicked in, and he attempted to kick the Quadra with his other leg. Ulquiorra quickly blocked the incoming appendage, and raised him up before checking him in the stomach several times. Naruto coughed up a mixture of spittle and blood, but held steady. 4 of his tails moved, breaking free of the hold Ulquiorra's tail had on his leg. He landed on his hands before spinning himself like a top. Ulquiorra ducked under the spinning tails, and Naruto quickly halted himself and opened a palm. Bala Grande. Damn it, Ulquiorra cried out as the large projectile hit him at point blank, sending him out into the skies of Hueco Mundo. Naruto got back on his feet just as the projectile exploded in the night sky. He got into a stance and waited for the Quadra's inevitable return. Naruto, look out, came the call of Grimmjow. The blonde barely caught a glimpse of a light from his peripherals. He never got a look at the object that pierced right through his chest, sending him flying off the roof and out onto the dunes of Hueco Mundo. Naruto couldn't help groan in pain and annoyance as he felt the power within the spear embedded in his torso begin to grow. One word crossed through the Arrancar's mind at that point. Shit. Grimmjow and Ichigo watched as a giant pillar of light shoot into the air from the spot where they had seen Naruto landed. A second later, a shockwave erupted from the light, sending Grimmjow and Ichigo a few feet back. Naruto, Grimmjow called out, making a dash towards the edge of the roof. He looked to see black, charred glass where Naruto had been. I had been hesitant on using the Lanza del Relampago on him. The attack is powerful enough to destroy the roof of Las Noches, so I suppose it was better to launch it from the side and send him off the palace. Grimmjow turned towards the Quadra, who was slowly walking towards him and the slowly rising Ichigo, Ulquiorra. You. The SXTA felt his teeth grinding against each other. He couldn't feel anything from the media espada. Not a single shred of Ryotsu. He looked out to the smoldering crater, no trace of a body. Naruto couldn't die. Not like that. The idiot deserved better than such an underhanded move like that. Why didn't Naruto move? Then again, Grimmjow saw the spear travel at speeds he didn't think possible for a projectile weapon. Just like that, Naruto's dead? Grimmjow felt his arms begin to shake. No. He can't be dead. He's too damn stubborn. The blue-haired Arrancar leveled his gaze with Ulquiorra. I don't care whatever that was that you threw at him. It wasn't enough. Odd. Ulquiorra stopped for a moment. I never thought you'd be someone who'd try and deny watching another get killed, Grimmjow. Naruto's not dead, you bastard, Grimmjow roared, pulling out Pantera. I see. Denial in the face of losing your one chance of winning this fight. Ulquiorra gave a chuckle. I'll dispose of you too, and the others, swiftly. Then I'll kill the girl, if Aizen-sama wishes it to be done. You won't lay one finger on that woman, Grimmjow shouted. The idiot entrusted me to make sure this plan of ours works. That means I won't let anyone, not even you, get in my way. Grimmjow's fingernails ran over his Zanpakuto as he called forth his Resurrección, grind, Pantera. Ichigo stood up as well, the same goes for me. He called forth his hollow mask, his breathing a little heavy. Ready, Grimmjow? Grimmjow looked to his rival and at the moment, only ally. He returned his gaze to Ulquiorra while speaking to the teenager. You think you can keep up with him? I don't have much of a choice, do I? Not unless you want to die, I guess. Grimmjow replied, follow my lead. I'll try to draw his attention. Nail him in the critical spots if you can. Ichigo simply nodded. The two warriors forced themselves to move as Ulquiorra raised his Ryotsu further. The effect was like that of an ocean weighing down upon the duo, but they forced themselves to continue onward. Shikamaru watched from his hiding place underneath a billboard as Hisagi Shuhei of the 9th Division fight against one of the Frazione of the Three Espada. Hisagi had been doing well at first, but now he was proving to have difficulty with the enemy. He forced himself to remain in place. His job was to guard the central pillar at all costs. Nothing came before that task. Looking off to the side, he watched as Kira managed to dodge more of the feather-like projectiles from the Frazione he was fighting against. He wasn't too worried for the blonde-haired vice captain. Kira may be a rather peaceful, if not somewhat somber man, but he could fight when push came to shove. Shikamaru had witnessed the ability of Wabazuki. It wasn't shaped the way it was in Shikai form for nothing. The sound of metal clashing with metal drew Shikamaru's attention from the two vice captains, and he turned off to the distance where his own captain was combating with one of the Espada. Hitsugaya Taiko's holding back, Shikamaru thought, watching as his youthful-looking captain attacked with Hirenmaru's dragon-shaped ice projectiles. He knew for a fact that the 10th Division captain was saving his strength for the tougher opponents. Most likely among them being Aizen. The 5th-seated officer thought, his eyes moving towards the giant inferno in the sky that was the Sotaichu's Shikai. It disturbed Shikamaru how Yamamoto could call upon Ryujin Jaka's powers so easily and simply stand there while holding back such a power like Aizen's. I suppose that's why he's the commander-general. Minutes passed as Shikamaru lay low, his hand resting on the handle of his sheathed Zanpakuto while he watched the battles unfolding. Sure enough, Kira had managed to kill, in a rather gruesome manner, in the Nara's opinion, his opponent, and it looked like Hisagi had gained the upper hand as well. Akaku's spiritual pressure was dropping, but Yumachika seemed to be gaining back power from what Shikamaru felt. As long as we can conserve our strength against the weaker enemies, we have a chance. Shikamaru spoke, closing his eyes for a moment. Hell. If we manage to make it through this battle without any casualties would be nothing short of a miracle. Pessimism isn't helpful right now, Shikamaru. Shikamaru sighed as he heard Ge echo in his mind. It's not pessimism, it's being realistic. You're trying to convince yourself to believe that, aren't you? Kusaka Kage retorted, laughing quietly. Being pragmatic helps in situations like this. I don't understand how believing that kind of thought process is beneficial to you, but suit yourself. Just don't go and get killed if you can avoid it. The quiet spirit finished, and its presence died down to a weak ebb in the back of Shikamaru's mind. Letting out a grunt of acknowledgement, Shikamaru returned to watching the battle at hand. I should have brought something to eat. Die, Ulquiorra, Grimmjow roared, jutting an elbow forward and blasting out a salvo of the spike-like projections from the joint in his arms. They hit Ulquiorra directly, causing an explosive wave of dust and smoke. Grimmjow could still feel the Quattra's presence where he had been standing. The bastard hadn't been phased at all. Ichigo seemed to understand as well, and used the smokescreen to get behind the believed area where Ulquiorra was standing. He reeled back his blade as it glowed black and crimson. Getsuga Tenshou. Grimmjow flew up as the mighty wave from Ichigo's blade roared past him. The smoke had cleared by now, and Grimmjow looked down. No, Grimmjow thought, watching as Ulquiorra stood there, uninjured aside from a few burn marks. Ichi's perfectly fine? Nothing at all? Ichigo's eyes widened in disbelief. How? Ulquiorra disappeared from view, reappearing behind Ichigo. The substitute Soul Reaper turned around, only to feel pain rip throughout his body. He coughed up a glob of blood which leaked through the mouth of his mask. Looking down, he saw the hand of the Quattra stuck in his chest. Ichigo Kurosaki. You've lived for too long. Ulquiorra spoke, raising a single finger to the visored boy's chest. Grimmjow let out a string of profanities as he rocketed towards the Quattra and Ichigo. He formed a bala in either of his hands, and used Sonito to jet past the Quattra's vision and reappear by his side. He launched both of his projectiles from several yards away, only to have Ulquiorra bat them away with one of his wings. Grimmjow blinked once before calling forth more power and launching a string of the projectiles at Ulquiorra. What a fool, Ulquiorra remarked, raising his wing and blocking the attacks. Grimmjow noted the lack of damage being done, and stopped his barrage. He blasted forward and spun his leg around to catch the Quattra in the neck. Snap! Thwack! Grimmjow felt a pain like that of a whip in the face hit him. Unlike a whip, however, the tail of Ulquiorra had the power to send him flying into the roof and bounce a few times. The SXTA managed to land on his feet. He felt Ulquiorra's power increase, and judging by the finger pointed at Ichigo's chest, he could guess that the Quattra was going to launch another one of those Seros. Tasugi no Mai, Hakuren, Grimmjow felt a cool wind fly over him, and a stream of pure ice rose out of seemingly nowhere. He made contact with Ulquiorra, who had not expected the sudden attack. He was forced to let go of Ichigo as the ice crashed into him. Turning his attention towards the hole in the roof where he had released his powers, he noted a single individual standing there. A woman with black hair and a white sword with an equally white ribbon running off the handle. A Shinigami. Ichigo recognized that attack from anywhere. He grunted in pain, feeling more warm liquid running down his chest as he turned to his savior, Arukiya. The young Kuchiki girl Flash stepped to the boy's side, kneeling down beside him. Ichigo, it's okay. Oh, her voice caught in her throat as she looked at the state he was in. She had sensed his Ryotsu falling from the moment the roof of Las Noches exploded. This apparently was the reason. Among several deep gashes in his body, probably several broken ribs and fractures in his limbs, he had a hole in his chest. It wasn't deep, but but it was still enough to warrant her concern to become visible on her features. "Oh. Ichigo. We need to get you to Hana Taiko, Sakura, or Orihime so they can." A blur shot past Ichigo's vision, taking the girl with it. Ichigo's head whipped to the side to see Rukia being pinned to the ground by Ulquiorra, his hand pressing down on her throat. "Rukia." Grimmjow saw his opportunity to attack, and shot forward. He was only several feet from the Quadra, claws ready to rip his head off. Gah! In the blink of an eye, Grimmjow had been hit by another one of Ulquiorra's black arrows. He went flying into a pile of rubble. The SXTA did not get up. Ulquiorra returned his attention to Rukia. "You're even weaker than Kurosaki." He picked her up, letting gravity do the work of choking her as he held her with one hand. "Did you honestly think that you could have done anything? Perhaps distract me? Perhaps you were scared for him? Was it the supposed heart that I've heard those pathetic humans speak of?" He tightened his grip around her throat, and Rukia's voice was now barely above that of a rasping squeak. For a Shinigami to go and throw themselves openly into danger is an example of pure stupidity. "Ulquiorra, let her go." Ichigo spoke, rising to his feet yet again. "I'm the one you want to fight. She's got nothing to do with this." Turning to the boy, the Quadra spoke. "Oh?" He could see the flicker of emotion in Ichigo's eyes. The way his eyes shifted every few seconds to the girl spoke volumes more than any words could. He was frightened now. Ulquiorra held out his free hand, and another spear formed. Ichigo's eyes widened as he began to move. "No, Rukia." Rukia felt something pierce her stomach. She felt the grip around her neck loosen, and she began to gulp in breaths of air while a horrible pain ripped through her body. She heard a voice that sounded very much like Ichigo's calling out to her. She rolled her head to the side, cold beginning to seep into her body. She could make out the faint, blurry image of Ichigo kneeling by her side. "Ichigo. You're alright, huh?" She smiled. "Haha. I guess I got reckless when I saw you about to take that Sero." She closed her eyes. "Ichigo. Save Karakura." "Stop, Aizen." She opened her eyes again. "I'm sorry, I don't think I'll be joining you." Rukia. Stay with me." Rukia's eyes were glassed over now. She gave no reply as blood trickled down her chin from her mouth. "No." Rukia's chest had stopped rising. Her spiritual pressure had gone down to nothing. He couldn't sense her life force that he had become so used to. The presence that she had. The aura that helped him move forward. "Not you, Rukia. Please. No." Images of Rukia laughing, smiling, yelling, and just being there for the substitute Soul Reaper ran through his mind. She couldn't die. If he lost her, then who would keep him updated on Soul Society? Who would give him the stupid pointers and bits of advice on fighting hollows? You can't be dead. The day she had met him. It had been the day his life had changed forever. She made him what he was. She made him into the warrior he was today, if not for her. Kill. Ichigo felt the darkness creeping over him. He didn't resist. He was too caught up in the death of the girl at his knees to care. He welcomed the anger, the hatred. Kill him. Kill them all. It was at that moment that Ichigo Kurosaki lost his mind. Then all hell broke loose. "Wake up, Naruto. Shut it, Fox." An annoyed growl was heard from all around the blonde. "Wake up or I'll make sure it feels like acid is running through your blood with every step you take." Naruto chuckled. "You don't have that power over me. Don't be so sure of that. Besides, you're the only one who can take down that cursed Ulquiorra. Either that, or all we've done will be for nothing." Naruto opened his eyes and looked around. He blinked the sand away that got in his eyes and sat up. He was in his normal state, sword by his side. It was a smart idea to release our power at the last second when that spear exploded up with an on-the-fly idea as when he had been sent flying off Las Noches to let loose a large burst of the combined force of Kyuubi and his spiritual energy. The result had been a small yet effective coating of Ryotsu that protected him from any major damage. Yes, it was. That's besides the point right now, though. I'm sensing that Shinigami Boy's Ryotsu, and it's unnerving. It's giving off the feeling like it does when he wears that hollow mask, but even more so. Kyuubi noted, he seems to have fallen deeper into that wizard form of his. Yet I can hardly sense the human side of him anymore. What are you saying? Naruto asked, feeling the oppressive force that had Ichigo's signature on it. I'm saying that it feels like he's lost control, simpleton, Kyuubi finished. Naruto nodded, looking towards the dome of Las Noches. Sure enough, he could almost see the aura that was Ichigo's Ryotsu. What disturbed him was the lack of Ryotsu from Grimmjow and Ulquiorra. If Ulquiorra is down, why is Kurosaki still releasing his own Ryotsu? Naruto wondered aloud. He stood up and cracked his neck. I better go back to Seven Tails, just in case. Drawing his blade, he called forth his seventh-tailed state, and flew towards the dome, unsure of what he would find waiting for him. Gah! Ha! Ha! Ulquiorra struggled to catch his breath as he held a hand over the stump that had once been his arm. This monstrosity, whatever it was not the Soul Reaper he had been fighting moments ago. The thing before him was far from what he knew Ichigo Kurosaki to be. A mask unlike what the boy had adorned before now covered his entire head, along with 2 long horns and stripes running down the center of his face, as well as along said horns. His orange hair now ran down his back like a wild, untamed mane of some feral beast. The hole in his chest that Ulquiorra had formed from stabbing him had grown larger, and gained an intricate design of sorts around it. His body was now as white as his mask. For a finishing touch, there were claws on both his hands and feet. So, Ulquiorra began, "Who are you?" The entity before him said nothing, instead replying by tossing the arm that was torn off from Ulquiorra's body onto the ground. A low growl emitted from the hollow-like beast. Ulquiorra decided to take advantage of his opponent's inaction, and began to form a new arm. "It was impressive for you to manage to rip off my arm with such ease. However, one of my abilities in my released state is enhanced regeneration. Any limb I lose can be replaced, so as long as my organs and brain remain intact." He held out his hand and formed another spear. Ichigo appeared to give no indication that he was truly listening, the black holes in his mask staring at him blankly. He let out a reverberating breath as he remained in place. "I'll ask you again. Who are you?" Ichigo's reply was to let out a deafening roar. Ryotsu flooded the area suddenly, and Ulquiorra unconsciously took a step back. "I see that words are unable to reach you." He gripped Lanza de Relampago in his right hand. "In the end, you're just a mindless beast." Ulquiorra threw his spear, which careened through the air. Just as it was about to make contact, Ichigo faded away from view. Ulquiorra's eyes widened. That wasn't a shunpo. He formed another spear. That was sonito. The static-like sound of a sonito could be heard coming from behind the quadra. He spun around and dodged the zanpakuto of his opponent. "Your powers aren't like the ones you had before. You seem to become even more like a hollow." Ulquiorra ran forward. "You've proven to be a larger threat than I had anticipated." Thrusting his weapon forward, he had intended on stabbing Ichigo in the chest. However, an arm instead caught the spearhead. "What?" Ulquiorra exclaimed in disbelief. To block Lanza del Relampago from point blank was short of impossible. A shockwave erupted from the spear as Ichigo snapped it from the point. Ulquiorra's yellow eyes met with Ichigo's glowing, ember-like eyes. "How?" Tensa Zangetsu moved almost too fast for the Arrancar to track with his eyes. For a second or two, there was no blood. Then the gash that ran down his torso erupted as crimson poured out of his wound. His mind was still trying to process the fact that he was being defeated by a human who had turned hollow as he was slammed to the roof by one of Ichigo's feet. A white orb of light began to form in between the warped form that was once Ichigo Kurosaki. How merciless. Just like that of a hollow, Ulquiorra noted. "Ichigo." The familiar Ryotsu of certain media espada crashed down upon the area. "Enough." The monster looked up, dispelling his sorrow in the process. The beast let out a growl as he stared at the interloper of their fight. Ulquiorra looked to the edge of the roof as well, and saw none other than Naruto Uzumaki standing there. 7 tails released. Uzumaki. "How typical of you to hide like that." "Save it, Ulquiorra." Naruto spoke, his eyes not leaving the black abyss of Ichigo's 2 sockets. "What happened to you, Ichigo? I'm not really liking the new getup." Ichigo lifted his foot from Ulquiorra's chest, and Ulquiorra quickly took the opportunity to get some distance between himself and the warped form Ichigo had taken. "Ulquiorra, we need to team up here," Naruto stated, looking off to the side for a moment. "He's gone off the deep end." Ulquiorra was quiet for a moment before he spoke. "You're suggesting we work together to bring that boy down?" "That boy isn't here right now, Ulquiorra." The media espada replied. "Either we set aside our differences or this guy goes on a rampage without anyone to stop him." The blonde's eyes locked with Ulquiorra. "I'm well aware of the fact that you and I have very different agendas here, but if we don't take him down, it'll be over for both of us. Your choice." Ulquiorra let out a noise that sounded something like that between a scoff and a chuckle. "I suppose as fellow Arrancar, we're entitled to kill this imitation. Whatever floats your boat. I want to avoid trying to kill him if I can help it." "Have you not noticed the volatile energy he's letting off?" the Quadra asked with a hint of sarcasm. "He's a walking disaster waiting to happen, Uzumaki." "Then we'll contain him," Naruto replied. Ulquiorra shook his head. "If he shows no signs of recovering from his current state, we will have to kill him." The Quadra called forth another spear into his hands and got into a ready stance. Naruto's gaze wandered off to the sides, and he noticed the beaten form of Grimmjow leaning against a piece of rubble from the roof. He looked to be breathing fine, but he seemed to be knocked out. Off further from Grimmjow was a motionless form of that one Shinigami girl that was with Ichigo's group. Rukia Kuchiki, if Naruto was right. "What happened to that Soul Reaper?" Naruto asked. "She got in my way," Ulquiorra replied. Naruto sighed. "Damn it, Ulquiorra. I can't sense anything from her." The blonde shook his head. "If she's dead, you'd better hope I'm too exhausted to fight you after we're done with Kurosaki here." Ulquiorra gave no reply. "Let's draw him away from those two. The last thing we need is to draw others into this fight." The Quadra nodded, agreed. The two slowly headed towards another part of the palace roof, eyes on Ichigo as they did so. Ready? Ulquiorra nodded, crouching a little and holding his spear in a ready position while he kept his eyes on monster before them. Ichigo seemed to be aware of the situation at hand, raising his sword in front of him and letting out a growl. Naruto extended his wrist blades a bit. Let's do this. Orihime couldn't help but tremble as she gazed out to the open skies above where the supposed battle was occurring. She had no idea what was going on. She sensed Ichigo's Ryotsu flatline a short time ago. Then Rukia arrived only to go and engage in the battle as well. Then her power blipped off Orihime's mental radar as well. Grimmjow's disappearance followed shortly after. Naruto was still in the fray, as was Ulquiorra. Ichigo though, she wasn't sure. It felt like his power had increased some time ago, but now she couldn't tell. It almost felt the same way it did when he called on his mask, but more malign. Needless to say, she didn't like the vibe she was getting from this power. Squinting her eyes to avoid being blinded by a sudden red light, she swore she heard what sounded like Naruto's voice, and a blur flew over the gigantic hole in the roof. The palace shook a bit before she saw the same blur rocketing in the opposite direction, screaming. Ah, that definitely sounded like Naruto. She didn't sense Ulquiorra increasing his power though. Who was Naruto fighting? Not Ichigo. Orihime spoke, though her voice was laced with uncertainty. Naruto wouldn't suddenly be helping Ulquiorra, would he? Well, the fact that he was among the ranks of the Espada didn't settle well. Naruto was good at hiding his true intentions, at least that's what Orihime heard Apache say. Oi! Orihime had been zoning out so badly that she was unaware of the figure looking down at her from the damaged roof. She saw the blue mess of hair and her eyes widened. Grimmjow. You're alright, she smiled. I was worried that. Save it. I need to get you out of here. The SXTA spoke as he jumped down to the floor where Orihime was standing. He grunted as he landed, and rubbed his ribs. Orihime didn't let the burn marks go unnoticed. What happened? She reached out with a tentative hand, only to have it batted away by the SXTA. It's nothing, come on, I need to, not until you let me look at that burn. Orihime spoke, raising her hands in front of the SXTA and already calling forth her healing powers. The SXTA opened his mouth to speak, but growled in annoyance as he noted she wasn't paying attention to him anymore. Damned girl. What the hell are you still doing here for? Grimmjow asked after she finished healing the burns. I need to get you back with the others. Kurisaki's gone off the deep end, and it looks like Naruto and Ulquiorra are teaming up against him. Wait. What do you mean, Ichigo's gone off the deep end? Why is Naruto attacking him? Grimmjow sighed while running a hand through his hair. Gah, crap, here we go with the tears. The SXTA was right on target. Orihime was starting to water in the eyes. I don't honestly know, but Naruto and Ulquiorra were fighting one moment. Then Ichigo came back from the dead and began going berserk after that Shinigami girl got hurt. Rukia-san's hurt? Orihime asked, is she alive? Grimmjow didn't say anything. Is she alive? Orihime asked again, this time going against her better judgment and grabbing Grimmjow by his white shirt. I don't know, Grimmjow shouted, damn it, the dumb woman leapt into the fray without knowing what she was doing. She got beaten down by Ulquiorra. Then Kurosaki went nuts. That's all I can say. Orihime's eyes shed a few tears before she tried to steal her features. Take me up there, Grimmjow. The SXTA blinked, a bit surprised by the determination in Orihime's voice. What the hell are you talking about? You want to get killed? Because that's what will happen if I bring you up. Please, Grimmjow, Orihime spoke, raising her voice while trying to hold back her tears. My friends. They're all fighting to get me back, and I can't do anything about it. I only heal, and even then, they still get hurt all over again. I had to help Rukia-san. She lowered her head, please. Now, Grimmjow wasn't one to cave in to a girl's crying. He dealt with that enough times when it came to Lillinette, still. TCH, fine. Just don't leave my sight. Grimmjow spoke. He picked the girl up without another word, causing her to yelp as she was lifted off the ground bridal style. Grimmjow spared her a look while muttering something about over-emotional women, and Naruto owing him big time. Ulquiorra spun his around once to block Ichigo's Bankai, only to be forced back a few feet from the sheer impact. He didn't let a second go by, rocketing forward before halting at the last second and letting Ichigo's sword graze the front bangs of his face. As the sword swept past him, the Quatra thrust his weapon forward. Ichigo faded from view, his image and afterimage followed by a low-sounding boom. Ulquiorra ducked, and a moment later Tensa Zangetsu slashed just above his horned head. Putting some distance between himself and the warped vizard, the Quatra reappeared by the hole in the roof. What caused you to call forth this sudden power, Kurosaki? The only response he got was a primal roar. Shut it, already. Ichigo was sent on a trajectory pattern off the palace roof as Naruto managed to deck him in the jaw. The blonde turned to Ulquiorra, thanks for keeping him distracted. Ulquiorra said nothing, instead standing up fully and following the blonde to the edge of the roof. They both kept themselves in a ready stance, just in case their opponent decided to pull a fast one on them. Looking down, they saw nothing that gave way to where Ichigo had gone. Then they felt an immense buildup of power behind them. Naruto was the first to move, raising an open palm and blasting a sero. The crimson-colored beam of light met with Ichigo's open palm, and the monstrosity hefted it over his shoulder, letting it fly off into the night sky. A second later, he was in front of the two, sword raised. Naruto raised his bladed wrists, and grunted as the strain of several tons of force smashed into his arms. He grit his teeth, and shouted, "Ulquiorra, get him, now." Ulquiorra didn't need an explanation, pointing his index finger and firing a black wave of power from it. The sero hit Ichigo, sending him towards a pile of debris. The monstrosity let out a roar of pain as a dome of black energy grew from the blast before exploding. The two stood in place, neither daring to move. Naruto took in a deep breath while rubbing his wrists. Did that do it? His question was answered a moment later by another roar echoing through the night, and the image of the twisted form of Ichigo rising up from the rubble, eyes ablaze. It would appear that it did not. Ulquiorra answered, "We should attempt to catch him from behind." "It's worth trying." Naruto agreed, "I'll draw his attention. Get him when you've got an opening." The blonde sprinted, Kurosaki. Ichigo looked up, the face of a rather ticked-off Naruto inches from his own. Naruto caught Tensuzanjetsu as it made to swipe at him, blood trickling down his palm. Ichigo didn't seem surprised in the least, instead attempting to grab a hold of Naruto with his other hand. Three tails met his hand, knocking it away before one wrapped around his arm. "Not this time." Naruto opened up his free hand. "You may be tough, but no one can take my attacks from point blank without sustaining damage." He aimed his slowly forming sero at Ichigo's chest. "I don't know what happened to you, Kurosaki, but you're not the kid I remember from before." "Naruto. Wait." The media Espada looked up to see Grimmjow carrying Orihime out from the hole in the roof. The blonde's sapphire eyes widened. "Orihime." The orange-haired girl was making her way towards Naruto, but Grimmjow stopped her by grabbing hold of her wrist. The SXTA began shouting at her, and the orange-haired girl looked down for a moment. Grimmjow seemed to quiet down immediately, and began talking again. Naruto couldn't make out anything they were saying, however. Ichigo seemed to take the brief distraction as a cue to attack. He growled as a ball of white light formed between the tips of his two horns. "That much power? So quickly?" Naruto found him an attack he couldn't stop. "Nope, that's too much power for this close of a proximity." Ulquiorra was behind the beast, and slammed his glowing lance into the side of Ichigo's head. The monster roared in agony from the attack, and was sent skidding across the roof. Ichigo got back to his feet immediately, sword in hand and glaring daggers at Ulquiorra. Naruto felt beads of sweat run down his face. Thanks. HMPH. You would have been dead had I not intervened. Ulquiorra spoke. "If you state that you're going to distract him, try to ensure that you'll live long enough for me to make my move, Uzumaki." Naruto, despite still being a bit shaken, glared at the fourth Espada. "Right." Naruto turned back to the hole in the roof. "What the hell is Orihime doing up here with Grimmjow?" Naruto's question was answered as he watched Orihime making her way towards the beaten form that was Rukia Kuchiki. The blonde frowned, but shook his head. Orihime was a healer in the end. The girl had an almost impulsive need to throw herself into the fray if it meant saving lives. "Damn it, we can't have her here right now." The blonde grumbled. He was at least a bit content with Grimmjow standing by her side, watching the form of Ichigo while one hand rested on Pantera, Ulquiorra. Nothing is working against Kurosaki. He just gets back up as if our attacks never happened. "It would appear so," Ulquiorra replied. "We have to take him out quickly. If I'm correct, he's got high-speed regeneration as well." "Well, that's just perfect, so he's overpowering and unable to be wounded." The blonde ground his teeth. "All right. Let's try that tactic of mine one more time. I'll be ready this time." "Very well. Don't mess up again, or I may have to take you out with Kurosaki," Ulquiorra replied. Naruto chuckled. "That's sweet of you, Ulquiorra." "Ooh, I think that's the last of them." Sakura dusted herself off while looking towards Renji. "Yeah. Kenpachi Taiko sure did a number on that one Arrancar." Rubidan, well, what was left of him anyway, had been decimated after Kenpachi had grown tired of fighting the Arrancar. He had stated twice to the Exekia's leader that he wasn't in the mood to fight him anymore, and twice Rubidan had ignored his warning. Now he was dead. TCH, the moron didn't know when to quit, Kenpachi retorted, causing the Rosette to laugh nervously. "Alright, Kenpachi Taiko." Sakura laughed. So, anyone know where Rukia went?" "I saw her heading towards the tower entrance." Ryu spoke. "I think she said something about Ichigo's power feeling unstable or something. We should go help the others." Chad spoke. "I'm getting a bad feeling from that huge hole in the roof above. Like hell I'll let you weaklings get any further." The group looked up to see a figure descending down towards them. Chad was the first to recognize him. "That's one of the Espada that first came to Karakura." Chad stated, and the group was immediately on guard while Hana and Izan took to the back. Hey, quite a big guy, isn't he? Zaraki commented, is he strong at all? Chad shrugged, he managed to get beaten by Yoruichi-san. Kenpachi laughed, then he's probably not worth my time. Yami seemed to be insulted by the last comment, what did you say? Zaraki looked up to the Arankar, who seemed to be growing bigger all of a sudden. I said that a weakling like you won't prove to be any fun for me in a fight. I'll let the others handle you. The 11th squad captain turned his back and walked towards the back, he's all yours. You bastard, Yami growled. The area became weighed down suddenly by Ryotsu. Sakura took a step back, what is this guy's rank? Dust blew past the group. He's obviously not a low-ranked Espada if he's giving off this much power all of a sudden. Ha ha ha, Yami laughed, grabbing a hold of his Zanpakuto, let me guess. You think that just because I'm the 10th that I'm the weakest, right? Think again. Yami's Zanpakuto glistened in the sun as he pulled it from its sheath. While I may be the weakest Espada without my resurrección, when I call upon my released state. He grinned with an almost maniacal glee, I become the strongest. Oh no. Renji turned back towards Chiruchi, who was suddenly stricken with fear. What? You know something about this guy? Chiruchi shook her head, well, it was just a rumor. But I've heard that Yami is actually considered to be the Zero Espada. If ranking goes based on the strongest being the smallest number, then. Nell frowned, I've never heard of this. Aizen always had the Espada ranked 1 through 10. Chiruchi took in a deep breath and exhaled, true. But we were made Priverin ages ago. He could have made changes in that time. I mean, you can just feel his Ryotsu trying to crush us, can't you? Yami was now several stories high, laughing as he continued to grow. Idiots, that's what I mean. The Espada's true rankings don't go from 1 to 10. They go from 0 to 9. Damn it. Sakura grit her teeth. Renji, Uryu, we need to. Stand down. Sakura whirled around to meet the stoic captain of the 6th division, Kuchiki Taiko. Gakuya simply took a step forward. This beast has yet to release his Zanpakuto and he's already surpassed the power of most vice captains. He stood before the others now. I suggest you all stay out of our way. Taiko, we can still help. Gakuya looked back to face Renji. He said nothing for several moments before looking ahead. Don't get in our way if you plan on helping. Our way? Uryu repeated. A deep laughter could be heard as Kenpachi walked forward as well. Hey, that's right. This guy suddenly goes and lets off all that Ryotsu like that. I can't let him get away with hiding all that power from me. He held his blade at his side, and looked to Byakuya. Kuchiki, don't bother fighting, this guy's mine. Fool. Do you intend to order me around? I'm just saying I don't plan on letting you take this fight from me. Nell blinked several times before looking to Sakura, is that man insane? Sakura laughed nervously. Kenpachi Taiko is the head of the 11th division. Love for battle is almost a prerequisite for joining that division. The conversation was interrupted by Yami's laughter. You trash, none of you will stand a chance against me. Ha ha ha, go ahead and try to fight me, though. I hate to just sit around and waste all that energy I built up. His tattoo began to peel away, the one from his number, 10, disappearing while the 0 remained. Kenpachi and Byakuya stood their ground, unaffected by the massive spiritual pressure. In rage, Ira, the sand blew into the air, clouding the entire group's vision. However, they could clearly make out the silhouette of Yami's growing form behind the curtain of sand. When the winds had died down, Renji was the first to make comment on the sight before him. Holy shit. The once large Espada had increased exponentially, now casting his shadow over the entire group and gave them all a feeling that they had entered one of the classic movies of a monster destroying some helpless city. The Espada let out another bellow of laughter. I'm going to crush every single one of you little pieces of. The gigantic beast's words were cut off as a stream of pink smashed into his face. Byakuya had decided to cut to the chase, and made the first move by cutting up the monster's face with Senbon Sakura. Making the first move, huh? Kenpachi snickered, figures. Byakuya gave the 11th division captain an annoyed look. He left himself open. I merely capitalized on the moment. Gra, Yami roared, causing the two captains to stop quarreling. You damned Shinigami. I'll crush you for that. Yami cocked back a fist. Crap, everyone move. Sakura's advice was taken by everyone, and the group leapt away as the 0 Espada's fist crashed into the sand, sending a tidal wave of the sediment in every direction. Uryu and Chad had taken to the air thanks to Uryu having manipulated his spiritual energy to form the two. The others had taken to the standing in midair as well. So the moron can do more than talk, huh? Kenpachi commented, looks like he may be worth fighting after all. Sakura, Nell, and Chiruchi all stood side by side while Renji had Zabumaru activated and ready. They watched with something akin to helplessness as the behemoth of an Espada engaged combat with the two captains. As of the moment, they were merely a weak form of backup should Kenpachi or Byakuya fail to defeat the supposed 0 Espada. It gave the group an unsettling feeling in their stomachs. Rangaku stared down the 3 Arrancar, or to be more specific, Fraction, that were under the command of the Espada that was currently combating with Hitsugaya. So, should I introduce myself or something? You 3 have yet to attack me. Apache looked to Mila Rose, then to Sunday. The 3 shared an uncomfortable look, then they looked to Haribel, who had briefly crossed blades with Hitsugaya before also having a stare down with the young captain. Mila, Sunday. This doesn't seem right. Mila Rose growled. Damn it, Apache. Enough? You're already on thin ice as it is with that whole fiasco involving Naruto. If you plan on going rogue again, then. Mila's right, Apache. Sunday began. It's our duty to fight for Haribel-sama. Does it look like Haribel-sama wants to fight? Apache retorted. I watched Naruto get beaten to the ground. Damn it, all the while you 2 were trying to. Don't go throwing the blame at us, Mila Rose shouted. I was scared. Damn it. You think I wanted to fight you? Do you? Sunday looked down. None of us wanted that to happen, Apache. You're practically a sister to us. There was a moment of silence between the 3. Rangaku raised an eyebrow. What are they talking about? She didn't know whether it'd be good to egg them on or not. From the sound of things, that Apache or whatever her name was had done something that was less than agreeable with the other Arrancar. Apache let out a breath. I can't bring myself to fight the Soul Reapers. Sunday bit her bottom lip. If you don't fight them, then you'll be considered a traitor. The tomboy let out a bark of laughter. Please. I'm already dead where I stand. As soon as this is over and if Aizen by some stroke of bad luck survives, I'll be killed for my insubordination to him. The 2 were quiet, realizing that Apache was right. There was no excuse for her. She had willingly gone along with Naruto's revolt against Las Noches. She was just a pawn at the moment. Lessen the enemy forces before she was dealt with accordingly. Apache. Mila spoke. Don't. Apache interrupted. The less you speak to me, the better your chances of living are when all this is over. Apache. The 3 looked up to Haribel, who was looking to them. The Tercera's eyes met with Apache for a moment before the Fraction looked down. Yes, Haribel-sama? If we make it out of this war alive, I will do everything I can to protect you, as well as Sunday and Mila Rose. Apache looked up again, confusion on her face. Why? Haribel merely looked towards the captain before her. I simply refuse to betray the trust of any more of my soldiers. With that, Haribel released her Ryotsu, and flew at Hitsugaya. Apache was stunned for a moment. Haribel felt guilty. For what? Is she referring to Naruto? Apache questioned. That must be the case. She's known him longer than most of us have. Clenching her fists tightly, Apache looked towards the Shinigami vice captain. You said you wanted to introduce yourself to us. Well, go on. Rangaku seemed to be taken aback by Apache's words, but brushed it off. Rangaku Matsumoto, vice captain of the 10th division of the Gode 13. Apache, Fraction of Tia Haribel, the Tercera Espada and pupil of Naruto Uzumaki, the Media Espada. Rangaku smirked a bit. So you're still a student, Don't you think it's a bit dangerous for someone who's still learning to be in the middle of a battlefield? Apache just smirked right back. Usually, yes. However, she unclipped the chakram on either of her wrists. I was taught by the best. All 3 of us were. If not for the circumstances regarding this battle, Rangaku would have been tempted to learn more about this Arrancar girl. Well, then I hope you can prove that. The 10th Division Vice Captain drew her Zanpakuto. I sure won't hold back, if that's what you're thinking. Thrust, Sierva, Devour, Leona, Strangle, Anaconda. Rangaku couldn't help but regret her previous declaration that she had made on so boldly taking on all 3 of the Fraction at once. Perhaps it was because Hitsugaya was so concerned about the Tercera. Maybe Rangaku felt that she needed to prove to her captain as well as herself that she was fit for her position. Or maybe it was because she felt the faint presence of Shikamaru a few minutes ago before he suddenly disappeared. She smiled at that thought. Even if he wouldn't admit it, he was looking out for her well-being. After all this is done, I'm making him take me out for a nice dinner in the human world. And I need to have a talk with him that I've been putting off for too long. Growl, Hinata, this would be so much easier if he wasn't trying to kill us. Ulquiorra gave his comrade a flat look while the 2 floated in the air, looking down at Ichigo. The monster of a wizard had so far dodged or endured everything they had thrown at them. Naruto had even gone as far as carpet bombing the entire roof aside from the small section where Grimmjow, Orihime, and the Kuchiki girl were. That had done little more than piss off the masked beast. I sense that you have another brilliant plan? Nope. Ulquiorra raised an eyebrow. Really? I have an attack I haven't used yet. I'd rather not try it though. It's not made for a contained area, and those 3 could get sucked in as well. That doesn't help our current situation, then, Ulquiorra replied. Yeah, and yet we're running low on options. Unless. The blonde looked to his tails. Unless what? Naruto sighed. I could probably take my power a step higher. The only problem is that doing so would require time and energy would be wasted achieving the higher state. You're saying you could call upon an 8th tail? Ulquiorra clarified, his voice showing mild surprise. I was always informed that you can use up to 7. I can use up to 7 safely. I have the power to tap into the power of my 8th-tailed stage, but it's an almost useless tactic unless I can finish my opponent within 5 minutes time. After that, I usually would burn up my energy reserves and regress to my unreleased state. I see. Ulquiorra closed his eyes. How much time do you require for the 8th-tailed state to be activated? 3 minutes. Naruto may as well have asked for 1 hour. 3 minutes in a battle could be a difference between life and death. Ulquiorra sighed while calling forth his lance. I'll give you that minute. Oi, hey, I didn't say I was going through with this idea, did I? No, Ulquiorra answered. We haven't tried it yet, though. If you can knock Kurosaki out with this 8th-tailed form, that will suffice. Yeah, but can we be sure that there's any way to get him back to normal? The Quadra shrugged. No, but it's better than having to deal with a rampant beast. Naruto chuckled. True. The blonde sucked in a deep breath and exhaled. Alright, I'll start. You better get his attention off of me though. I tend to let off Ryotsu like a bonfire lets off heat when I call forth the 8th tail. Right. Ulquiorra dashed forward as Naruto began to gather power. Grimmjow stood only a foot away from Orihime as she mended the gut wound she had received earlier from the Quadra. He tapped his foot impatiently, wishing that the girl's powers worked faster. There was 3 high-level powers fighting not too far from them, and the sooner he got the 2 girls out of the way, the better. Can't you go any faster? Grim received a slightly annoyed look from Orihime. Alright, jeesh. Orihime turned her attention back to Rukia, who was slowly opening her eyes. She let out a sigh of relief when she saw Rukia's chest begin to rise and fall. Thank goodness, she's alright. The Kuchiki groaned. She looked through the yellow of Orihime's healing shield and met with the teenager's eyes. Orihime. Orihime smiled warmly, moisture at the corner of her eyes. Rukia-san, I'm glad you're alright. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to save you. Save? Wait. Rukia placed a hand on her stomach. Nothing. How did? Rukia shook her head. This was Orihime's powers. They were beyond normal understanding. Still, Rukia was pretty sure she had died. Well, she couldn't be too sure, considering she never died before. She had been close to death not too long ago when she had beaten the Ninth Espada. Still, she had been able to walk, despite her wounds. Images of Ichigo flashed through her mind suddenly. Ichigo? Is he? Her question was cut off as she looked on towards the opposite end of the domed roof. She could have sworn that she was sensing Ichigo's Ryotsu. But she didn't see him. Well, at least not any form of Ichigo she recognized. She saw an orange-haired figure with the most bizarre of appearances to him. Kurosaki's gone nuts. Probably because you almost got killed. Grimmjow answered, that's him, in case you're wondering. Not sure what happened to him. Rukia looked from Grimmjow back to the 2 figures further off. She recognized the other figure as the Espada Ichigo had been fighting earlier. If that was the case, was the other fighter Ichigo? Is that really Ichigo? Orihime spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. Ichi has that dark power that he can call upon. But, she finished healing Rukia up and called back her Soden Kishun. Grimmjow says he probably got angry after he saw you get hurt. So, this is because of me? Rukia asked, standing up with Orihime's help. No, Orihime stated, Rukia-san, you were just trying to help Ichigo and the others, it's not. Look, I don't care whose fault it is, but we can't just stand around here right now. If either of you got injured further in this fight, I'd be to blame and… Grimmjow snapped. Grimmjow. Rukia spoke, a bit surprised by how forward she was being with the Arrancar. I understand what you're saying. However, if Ichigo's still there, I need to get him back. He's using that power of his, and if he lost control because of me, so I had to do something to stop him from falling further. The Arrancar examined Rukia for several moments, then looked to Orihime, as though asking for her thoughts. Orihime simply nodded. Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you though. Rukia began walking towards what she believed was the boy she knew as Ichigo Kurosaki. She was having trouble forcing herself forward, the very Ryotsu flowing through the air being enough make her want to turn around and run. The feeling she was getting from that being was so unlike Ichigo. It wasn't comforting or reassuring. It didn't give you the feeling of safety and security. No, this was something completely different. This felt like something was trying to squeeze the very life out of her spiritual body. This Ryotsu felt more untamed, wild, and evil. She felt like it was trying to squeeze the life out of her, trying to destroy her where she stood. Ichigo. The beast that was Ichigo turned towards the petite soul reaper, a growl escaping his throat as he gazed upon her with the 2 void-like sockets in his mask. Ichigo cocked his head to the side slightly before growling louder, drawing his blade. Ichigo, it's me, Rukia. Listen, I know you want to protect us, and I know I must have scared you, but… Orihime brought me back. You can stop now. Ichigo didn't seem to be listening, however, and instead moved forward, taking deliberately slow steps as he gripped Tensa's Zangetsu in his right hand. Then, without warning, he blurred in front of her, and a hand grabbed a hold of her uniform and lifted her into the air. Gah! Rukia cried out in surprise. She forced herself to remain as calm as possible, which was simply shaking while facing Ichigo's masked face. Ichigo. I know you're there. Stop this. You're going too far with that power. Tears began to streak down her face as she felt his grip tighten. You're strong, Ichigo, but look at the cost for this power. Please, don't. Ichigo growled before throwing Rukia to the ground. He stared at her for a moment longer before facing towards his new targets. Rukia drew in a breath before following the gaze of Ichigo, and set her eyes upon Orihime and Grimmjow. Ichigo, don't! Rukia cried. The twisted vizard roared before racing towards Grimmjow and Orihime with renewed carnal fury, his Ryotsu once again flooding the entire area like a wildfire. Shit, Orihime, get back! Grimmjow shouted, drawing his blade, grind, pant. Clang! Grimmjow's release was interrupted as Ichigo slammed his Zanpakuto into the Arankars. The SXTA skidded several times before losing his footing and falling back. He cursed under his breath, and ignored the jarring feeling his arm. Damn, that hurt. The blue-haired Arankar looked up as a shining yellow light appeared before him, and not a second later, Ichigo's blade smashed into the yellow barrier of Orihime's Santen Kesun. Almost instantaneously the barrier broke, but the resistance it had put up was enough to buy Grimmjow the time to move away. Ichigo let out a howl as he aimed his two horns at the espada, and a white light began to form at the tips. Grimmjow, get away from that! Grimmjow heard Naruto's voice shouting for him to watch out for the developing Sero, and like any skilled warrior, he let his instincts kick in. The white blast shot forward at an incredible speed, and the SXTA barely managed to avoid damage as the intense ray of energy singed his pant leg. A bolt of green suddenly appeared out of nowhere, hitting Ichigo's form and sending him flying back and off the palace roof. Grimmjow watched as the Quadra engaged with Ichigo, who seemed to have actually taken some damage from the surprise attack. The SXTA let out a deep breath. I swear I'm going to kill that damn Kurosaki after all this is over. Naruto clenched his fists as he gathered Ryotsu. He felt his body swelling with the raw power, and then like he had stated earlier, began to flood the area with his spiritual pressure. He began to breathe heavily as he forced the volatile energy to course through him. Hey, don't go too overboard here. You can't call this much power so quickly. Well aware of that, thank you very much. Naruto retorted to the demon fox. I don't really have the luxury of time, though. The Kyuubi gave a growl of agreement, and began to pump its own energy into Naruto's system. The blonde sucked air tightly between his clenched teeth as he felt a burning sensation run through his core. Crap. That's something I'll never get used to. The blonde growled as he felt his body began to shake. Alright. Here goes something. I hope. Gritting his teeth and digging his nails into his palms, he shouted. Rey de Zoros, Octavacola. The shockwave that emitted from the Arankar's body shook the landscape. Orihime and Rukia lost their footing as they saw a sudden bright red and orange light flooding the sky. And Naruto. Orihime spoke in a strained voice, Ichi's getting stronger. Rukia could only watch in a mixture of awe and terror. That's the power of an Arankar. How can someone hold? Her words died as a powerful maelstrom began to form around the roof of Las Noches. Ulquiorra, who was locked in a power struggle with Ichigo, glanced up to Naruto quickly. So that's his eighth tail. He wasn't joking about the bonfire simile. Ichigo even took note of the abrupt explosion of Ryotsu that was coming from one of his foes. He growled as his eyes narrowed. He would kill that Arankar first, then destroy the others. As he made to Mave's wrists that held his sword hand, he turned to see Ulquiorra, glowing lance in one hand. I'm afraid that won't be happening quite yet, Kurosaki. Ichigo let out a roar, but was silenced as Ulquiorra pushed off him and chucked his lance. Kurosaki was hit directly in the chest, and the glowing wave of energy knocked the Quadra back as he shielded his eyes from the green light. His victory was short-lived, though, for the rabid vizard burst out of the fading light, sword raised to kill. Ulquiorra raised a single hand and flew back. Even at point blank, this is surely enough to wound him. Ichigo was upon him in seconds, and Ulquiorra ripped loose his super-powered Sero. Ichigo cried out in agony as his body was sent flying back to the rooftop. Rising up from the rubble, the masked behemoth snarled at the incessant espada, and with a quick flourish of his blade, sent forth a powerful Getsugat Tenshou. Ulquiorra dodged the blast, and just as he expected, Ichigo was right before him as he recovered. He formed yet another lance, but only had enough time to block the black-colored katana. Eat this, you damn Shinigami bastard. A blue stream of light made contact with Ichigo, knocking him back a bit. Glaring down at the one who had sneak attacked him, he could see Grimmjow, his hands still aimed at him, smoking slightly. Ulquiorra didn't waste a second, and slammed his weapon into Ichigo's chest, or so it would have been had his opponent not been so quick to block. Ichigo's mouth opened as smoke leaked out of it. A sudden rise in Ryotsu signaled that Grimmjow had managed to call upon his released state once more, and a second later he was behind Ichigo. The feline-like espada spun once before delivering a devastating kick to the wizard's head. Ichigo flew back a few feet while the SXTA and Quattro got side by side. Don't get the wrong idea, Ulquiorra. I still wish you were dead, but this idiot's a bigger problem right now. Just stay out of my way. The Quattro retorted. Grimmjow just chuckled while aiming his elbow forward, and blasting the spiked missile-like projectiles from his body. Ichigo dodged them with no effort, but Ulquiorra was by his side when he reappeared after using Sonito. Their weapons clashed, sparks flying as they battled for dominance. Grimmjow joined in, and soon Ichigo was fighting off the two espada while attempting to lay an attack on one of them as well. Meanwhile, Naruto was sweating profusely. Looking at his arm, he could make out red fibrous tissue running down his arms, legs, and torso. He clenched his fist, and noted he now had 8 tails within his peripherals. I don't have much time, Naruto stated, eyes blazing red. It happened almost instantaneously. Grimmjow and Ulquiorra were attacking Ichigo, only for him to suddenly vanish in a blur. Said blur was being sent plummeting down to the sands below and the rooftop, as well as the rest of Las Noches, shook. The two espada raced to the edge of the roof to see a single figure standing over the monster that was Ichigo. Son of a... That's Naruto? Grimmjow said in disbelief. He has 8 tails? It would appear so. Ulquiorra replied, it's up to him now. Naruto picked up the fallen wizard and wasn't too surprised when a fist smashed into his face. He skidded back a bit, but appeared unharmed. He simply looked to the once teenage Shinigami and spoke, not this time, Ichigo. Ichigo's response was a roar of fury, and he dashed towards Naruto. The blonde didn't move, but his eyes began to glow brightly while his curled tails began to form bright orange blips of light at their tips. Sero. Ulquiorra would later comment that he swore skies had began to bleed and that the depths of the desert had opened up to swallow all who were on the surface up. Orihime screamed while Rukia held onto the girl to keep her and herself steady. The dome of energy continued to roar as Naruto's blast raged on. Grimmjow winced as the intense heat hit his face. Damn. And I thought Naruto was strong in his 7-tailed form. Uchiha breathed heavily as he stood beside Rangaku, who was faring only a little better. Looking past the strawberry blonde, he could see Momo shaking as she held Tobium before her. Shikamaru had been lying back in the shadows, and finally decided to step in when both of the vice-captains were beginning to lose their strength. Apache, Sunday to Sunday, and Mila Rose were all showing signs of fatigue as well. Mila was sporting a bruised face, several gashes along her right arm, and a burn mark running down her left leg. Apache had lost a portion of one of her antlers, and was pretty sure she would need to seek medical attention for a few bruised and possibly broken ribs later on. Sunday to Sunday had the least injuries, preferring to stay back. There was only evidence of a few blast marks from Momo's Shikai. We should call Aeon. Apache shook her head to Sun's suggestion. No way. We don't have enough control over him. That. And I'd rather not lose my left arm until I've run out of options. We should treat him as a last resort. Apache's right. Sun, we don't need Aeon to fight 3 lower Shinigami. Mila added, I'm not about to just go and do something reckless like that. Naruto would kick our asses for doing such a thing so early in the battle. Naruto-san betrayed us. Sunday to Sunday spoke, though her voice was quiet and didn't sound convincing. Take that back, Apache growled. Naruto was fighting for us, Sunday to Sunday, not Aizen or anyone else. Us. The Arrancar, and even Karakura. Which you're now trying to help take over. Mila spoke, anger laced within her voice. That. Apache grit her teeth, I never wanted to do this. Not like we have much of a choice, do we? Sunday to Sunday asked. Aizen-sama would kill us in an instant for betraying him. My loyalties lie with Harabel-sama and Naruto, and you guys. Apache spoke. She looked back to the 3 Shinigami, and spoke, I'm through fighting. Rangaku arched an eyebrow. What, you're just deciding to stop fighting? Shikamaru frowned, like I'll believe that, it's probably a ploy to. Apache growled, damn it, I'm not lying. I never wanted this stupid war, or this stupid plan to destroy Karakura. None of it. She looked to Mila Rose and Sunday to Sunday, who were both sending her incredulous looks. I surrender. Apache, shouted the 2 partners of the dear Arrancar. Momo, who was looking to the Fracione, spoke, I think she's being honest. She looks like she's already lost. Why would you suddenly decide to stop? What made you change your mind? Shikamaru asked, his kukiri-shaped shikai still in hand. I lost my sensei and my good friend. I was supposed to fight alongside him to protect this world, not destroy it. She grimaced, I betrayed him by fighting Seirei all this time. Apache, you can't be serious. Sunday to Sunday spoke, the Shinigami are our enemy. Are they really, Sunday to Sunday? Who's to say that we can't live in peace? I don't feed on human souls. Naruto never did. Hell, I'm pretty sure most of us haven't since the day we became Arrancar. If we destroy this city, then we're no better than the beasts that we evolved from. Apache spit some blood from her mouth. If you want to keep fighting for someone who's likely to kill you once he's gotten what he wants, Be my guests. I'll keep fighting him and anyone who tries to stop me, even if it costs me my life." The two were quiet for a moment as they looked to their dear friend. Mila then spoke, though she had lost her fierce edge, now sounding more scared. "What about Harabel-sama? I don't want to betray her, after all she's done for. We'll convince her to stop. I'm not entirely sure she wanted this fight either. You saw how she looked when she was fighting Naruto. She was hesitant. I'm pretty sure that if we stopped, and convinced that captain she's fighting to stop, we'd be able to get a truce between us and them." She looked to the blazing inferno that was the prison Aizen was being held within by the Commander-General of Soul Society's forces. Besides, Aizen's only Ono opened one eye, and groaned as he stood up. He felt like he had been hit by a ton of bricks. He was sore. He was pretty sure his vision shouldn't be swaying like it was, and above all else he felt drained. "Welcome back to reality, Kurosaki." Ichigo looked up to see Naruto, vest tattered and burnt, sitting on a chunk of white stone from Las Noches. "Naruto." "What?" His eyes widened as he remembered. "Gah, my hollow took over. Where's Rukia and Orihime?" "They're fine. They're still at the top of the roof, waiting for me to bring you up." I can't blame them, in all honesty. The blonde's gaze was unsettling to the teen. "I can't say I've ever encountered that kind of power before. Your wizard powers were scary enough, but then you go and pull another rabbit out of the hat and go homicidal on me." Standing up, Naruto walked over and helped Ichigo up. "Strangely enough, you don't seem to be that weary." "Yeah. I recall you gaining a power boost and then the last thing I remember was you blasting me with some really powerful energy. That was just a Sero. You're lucky I wasn't willing to use my more powerful techniques on you. For a while you had me outclassed, but it looks like after all the fighting you had in your messed up hollow form, you were getting a bit weak. It seems like me attacking you with 8 tails for that brief period was just enough to finish you." Ichigo blinked several times. Just a Sero? He had been blown away just by Naruto's standard Sero? He could only assume that it was fairly powerful if Naruto was in a released state, but even Ulquiorra had used some more advanced attacks to damage him, if his memories were correct. "Come on, let's get back into Las Noches." I felt Yami's Ryotsu increase, and I never recall him being as powerful as he seemed. "Something is up, and your friends could be in danger." The blonde spoke, and jumped into the air before flying back up to the top. Ichigo followed behind, still trying to recall what had happened. As soon as they touched the rooftop, Ichigo was greeted by a teary-eyed Rukia. She first elbowed him in the stomach before gripping him tightly in what felt something like a hug and a stranglehold. "You stupid, stupid." "Are Rukia? You're alright?" Ichigo asked. "I saw you?" "I'm fine, thanks to Orihime," the petite Shinigami replied, pointing to said girl. "She even patched up Grimmjow and Ulquiorra after Naruto took you out." "Haha, it's nothing, Rukia-san," Orihime spoke. Naruto and Ichigo noted the faint beads of sweat forming on her brow as she smiled to the Kuchiki. She was apparently fatigued from all the healing she had been doing today. Ichigo gave the orange-haired girl a thankful look before returning to Rukia. He saw the corners of her eyes still coated in moisture. He smiled a bit. "Sorry." "Idiot," was the only response Rukia gave. "Well done, Orihime." Naruto replied. "Now, we need to see what all the commotion is down below us." Ulquiorra, who like Naruto and Grimmjow, had regressed to his normal state, spoke. "Yami's power is just growing continually. I've never felt this much Ryotsu from him before." "Yeah, what the hell? I always thought he was a pushover," Grimmjow commented. "Did he suddenly gain a crap load of strength while we weren't looking? Hell, I thought he was in his chambers sleeping." Naruto's brow furrowed as he looked to the hole in the ceiling. Beyond that was Yami. From the feeling he was getting, Yami stood on par with Naruto's sixth-tailed state, possibly his seventh. That wasn't reassuring. The last thing he needed right now was another difficult opponent after going balls to the wall with 8 tails. "Alright, if I remember correctly, there's several captains from Seirei down there. That's a good thing. If they're all still alive, then we can give them back up and if Yami's attacking, beat him," Naruto stated. "Orihime, stay with Grimmjow." Grimmjow simply rolled his eyes, but said nothing further. As much as he hated to admit it, someone had to stay by Orihime's side, considering she was a valuable asset to their forces with her amazing powers. "What's the plan?" Ulquiorra asked. "Plan?" Ulquiorra sighed. "You have no plan, I take it." Naruto shook his head. "Plans take up too much time for us right now. Let's just get down there, get it over with, then go help those in Karakura." Ulquiorra didn't move for a moment. He locked gazes with Naruto. "You believe that I am on your side, then?" "That depends." Naruto spoke, hands suddenly resting on his hilt. "We did make a pretty good team, wouldn't you agree?" "What is the purpose of you saving millions of weak-minded humans, Uzumaki?" Ulquiorra asked, ignoring the glares from Ichigo and Rukia. "You do realize that Aizen-sama is capable of crushing all of us, correct?" "Peefed, you act as though I care about that madman." Naruto retorted. "Look, Ulquiorra, for once, do something that goes against your logical mind. Deep down, you know Aizen is power-hungry. and he'll cast us aside like broken blades the moment we slip up. Ulquiorra closed his eyes. He wouldn't deny it. Naruto was powerful. Still, this was completely taboo. Helping Shinigami. He never would have imagined himself partnered up with the likes of them, trying to stop the very man that gave him his position of power. It's up to you, Ulquiorra. I'd rather not shed blood against you, but if you force my hand, I will lay it out and kill you if I have to. Naruto finished, his voice showing no hint of uncertainty. It's your choice. I never thought I'd do such a thing as this. Very well. Let's stop Yami. The Quatra spoke, opening his eyes. Naruto grinned a bit, and gave the espada a thumbs up. See, that wasn't so hard, was it? You sicken me, Uzumaki. Yeah, hurry up and get a move on. You and me are taking front and center if we have to fight. Kenpachi and Byakuya stood on either side of the gargantuan Yami Ryalgo as the monstrous Arrancar let out a roar that shook the sandy landscape. He had so far lost several fingers, suffered a deep gash on his left arm, and one of his many legs was severed from his body. This didn't seem to hinder him all that much, though. You damned insects, I'll crush you, all of you. Kenpachi snickered, tch, this guy's more fun than I had hoped for. He held his blade at his side, prepared to move, still not that good, though. Agreed. Byakuya stated calmly, I'd rather end this while we have the advantage, however. Yami threw back his head and a giant ball of light began to form around his gaping maw. The two Shinigami captains prepared to evade, but... Gran Rey Sero. A blast of orange light came flying from seemingly out of nowhere, impacting with the Zero Espada's face. Yami roared in pain, and fell to the side. The two captains, along with the rest of those who had been fighting Yami, looked around to see where their surprise support had come from. They didn't need to look far, for there above the cloud of dust where Yami had fallen hovered Naruto, his 7 tails waving lazily behind him. Sakura was the first to notice, it's Naruto, he's alright. Nell, along with Unohana, had both joined the battle some time ago. The former Tercera's eyes widened and a smile formed on her lips as she looked to her lover from a distance, Naruto-kun. A few seconds passed when a few more presences made themselves known to the others. Grimmjow appeared with Orihime in his arms, while a somewhat weary Rukia was by Ichigo's side. A few feet away Ulquiorra had appeared with a quick sonito. Nell looked to Grimmjow, is Naruto alright? I thought I sensed him earlier. It was hard to tell though with Yami's Ryotsu flooding the area. Grimmjow simply nodded, he's fine. I think he's finally ready to kick things up a notch. Sakura raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The SXTA set Orihime down before nodding to Naruto. You can feel it, can't you? He's a lot stronger than the last time he called upon 7 tails. Ulquiorra was the first to pick up on it. The others turned to the Quatra for confirmation. He closed his eyes for a moment while speaking in his usual deadpan tone. I've hazarded a guess on the powers of Naruto's Resurrection. Every time Uzumaki calls upon more power than he has in previous battles, he becomes stronger when he calls forth his Resurrection the next time he fights. He turned towards the blonde in the distance before continuing. Last time he used 7 tails was when I fought him. He wasn't this strong when we battled. Then he was forced to use an 8th tail. Grimmjow grunted in agreement. Now he's significantly stronger. It's like he has no limit to his full power. That makes sense. Nell began. Naruto used to only have enough strength to call upon 5 tails. He slowly worked his way up, though, so maybe that's true. Kenpachi grimaced, that bastard cut into our fighting. Byakuya's features remained as stoic as ever, but he too seemed a bit irked by the sound of his voice. It would appear he has decided to take this fight for his own. The 6th Division captain turned to Grimmjow. I take it you Arrancar have a plan? Grimmjow gave a somewhat annoyed look to Byakuya, the captain's somewhat aristocratic attitude rubbing him the wrong way. Yeah, you could say that. He thumbed over his shoulder to Ulquiorra. Naruto and Ulquiorra are staying behind to take care of that moronic Yami while the rest of us go to Karakura and give backup. The two captains looked to each other before Kenpachi spoke up. Fair enough. As long as there's strong people to fight when we get there. Byakuya nodded. I suggest we get Kuritsuchi and anyone else lagging behind over here as well. We cannot leave Hueco Mundo without the help of a Garganta. I think Kuritsuchi Taiko was back in the chambers of that 8th Espada guy. Renji said, pointing towards a few towering pillars. He helped Uryu and I earlier, and then went off to go and see if he could find anything to use for research. That fool, we don't have time for. Byakuya cut himself off. Very well. Let's go. We don't have time to waste here. With Byakuya leading the others, the group of allies made their way to find the 12th Division captain and his vice captain Nemu. However, one stayed behind. Grimmjow noticed. Nell, come on. I'm not leaving Naruto again. Nell spoke up. Damn it, Nell, we don't have time for your sappy feelings to get in. I'm not suggesting it, Grimmjow. It's my decision. The SXTA and former Tercera looked at each other for a few moments before the blue-haired Arrancar grumbled to himself. TCH. It'd be a pain trying to convince you otherwise, anyway. Just don't get killed. Nell smiled. Thank you for understanding, Grimmjow. Whatever. Dondosheka and Peshi, who had rejoined the group sometime back, overheard their superior talking to the SXTA, Nel-sama. It's alright, you two. You need to go help the others fight Aizen. If possible, try and get Stark to realize that he doesn't have to fight us. Keep an eye on Sakura-chan too, if you could. She helped protect me earlier. I want to make sure she stays safe as well. The two gave her what must have been looks of reluctance, but eventually they submitted. Peshi sighed, alright. Don't go overboard though, that's Naruto's job. Right. With that, the two left, trailing behind Grimmjow and Orihime. The Tercera turned around to see Ulquiorra looking at her. She gave him a small smile. You know you're not strong enough to take on Yami, Nalil. I know, but it won't stop me from trying to help. The green-haired beauty replied, Naruto's important to me. Ulquiorra said nothing, instead turning to the ensuing battle. Yami had risen back to his feet, and looked severely pissed. For the lack of a better term, we should go help. Uzumaki may not be showing it, but he has suffered a severe drain in power. He used his eighth-tailed form, and it seems to have taken a toll on his reserves. Nell's smile disappeared, being replaced with the serious expression she reserved for battles. Alright. Lead the way, Ulquiorra. Naruto was now eye level with Yami, whose eyes were twitching as he glared at the blonde. You. Naruto gave a grin. I was wondering if you'd be joining the battle, Yami. You went off to go eat and sleep, and if you're like any other hollow, that's never a good thing for the enemy. I should know. The blonde's Ryotsu became more prevalent, crashing down on the area with surprising force. I can understand, though. I've been fairly lax these past couple decades myself, aside from a few battles. We powerhouses have to take it easy, after all. Yami blinked before a grin split across his lips. You? A powerhouse? He bellowed out in laughter. Haha, don't make me laugh, Naruto. You're not even a true Espada. You're just the lapdog of whatever Tercera is currently around. First Nell, then Harabel, face it. You're nothing without one of the higher-ranked Arrancar to protect you. The media Espada made no indication of being offended. Instead he just grinned a little more. You sure about that? You're not the only one that is good at hiding his power. Still, I have to admit, I never expected those rumors of you being the Zero Espada to be true. A bit of a disappointment if you ask me. I was hoping you'd become smarter at the very least. Seems all you did is get bigger. He got into a stance. I'm giving you only one chance, surrender, and I'll spare you. Yami replied by throwing a fist at the blonde. Naruto raised his hand and caught the monster's fist without even flinching, surprising the Zero Espada. Yami raised an eyebrow in surprise while Naruto's smirk vanished, being replaced with an annoyed scowl. Did you seriously hope to get me with that smidgen amount of power? Grr. You little. Naruto's crimson irises glowed briefly as he spoke, his voice interlaced with the Kyuubi's don't we all go. With strength disproportionate to his size, Naruto grabbed a hold of Yami's hand and tugged him forward. Naruto waited for Yami's face to reach him before spin-kicking him in the cheek. The Espada, caught completely off guard, crashed into the sandy ground, sending a shockwave in all directions. Yami opened a single eye just in time to see a streak of green light crashing down upon him. Through the eruption of neon green and dust, Naruto could see Ulquiorra in his first form Resurreción. A single finger pointed down at the behemoth. Nice shot, Ulquiorra. Naruto commented, his elongated incisors poking out from his upper lip. You know, you and I make a pretty good team, don't you think? I'd rather not discuss such frivolous matters at the moment, Uzumaki. Naruto. The media Espada looked up to see Nell floating above him with her sword in hand. Naruto's eyes widened before he found his voice. And Nell-chan? Why are you still here? I thought Grimmjow and Ulquiorra told you to go with the others and help fight. I'm not leaving you again, Naruto. Nell spoke as she floated down beside him. I left your side for long enough all those years ago. Nell-chan, that wasn't your fault. Neutra is a sneaky bastard, and I wasn't there to help like any good Fracción would have been. If anything, I hate to interrupt, but our opponent is coming to his senses. Ulquiorra spoke, cutting the two off. Naruto and Nell both looked down to the fallen giant, whose now scorched face was set into a snarl as he laid eyes upon the trio. Why you? You little pieces of shit. He opened his mouth, I'll kill all of you. Oop, time to move. Naruto shouted. Nell, Ulquiorra, and Naruto all zipped away as the enormous pillar of energy rocketed into the sky, missing the three by a wide margin. Is this just me or is he getting stronger? Nell asked. I mean, I'm still getting used to my powers again, but I feel like he's just gaining more strength as we fight him. I noticed that too, Ulquiorra commented. Something tells me if we don't finish him off quickly, he's just going to become more of an obstacle for us. I don't want to wait and find out if that's true. Naruto spoke, charging up a Sero on the tips of his 7 tails. Watch yourselves. The two moved back a little as Naruto aimed the tips of his tails down at the Espada, who was rising back up to his feet. Naruto forced more energy into each Sero as Yami looked up to him. Ha, you think that'll be enough for me, Naruto? I've taken worse and come out fine so far. You don't say, Naruto grinned, thanks for the heads up, I suppose. Now I won't have to worry about overdoing it, right? The balls of orange light tripled in size suddenly and Naruto raised his two hands. I guess this should be enough then. The Zero Espada's smirk disappeared. Chew on this, Yami. Naruto fired his charged up Sero cluster at the Zero Espada, and it hit dead on. The Media Espada remained in place as he channeled energy into his hands once more. Without warning, he began to fire a volley of bala down upon the smoking crater where Yami was still lying. Ulquiorra decided to take advantage of the moment, and began to charge up another Sero before blasting it at the fallen Espada. Amidst all the chaos, the two heard Nell call upon her release before joining as well. Soon the sky was raining green, pink, and orange. Then it happened. A sudden crushing weight descended upon the trio, and one of Yami's hands burst out from the smoke, grabbing a hold of the blonde. Naruto was pulled down to meet the infuriated Espada once more. Hey, there, ugly. Yami's grip tightened, causing Naruto to wince as he felt his body beginning to creak under pressure. That's it, I'm going to crush you to a pulp before devouring you whole, Uzumaki. Naruto forced himself to ignore the pain, though even with his immense power, he could only take so much physical strain. He was steadily weakening, and if he didn't do something quick. A bolt of pink hit the side of Yami. Naruto immediately recognized the Sero as Nell's, but this time, Yami showed no signs of injury. It was like he had become stronger within the few seconds that he had been pinned under the hail of blasts created by the three other Arrancar. Hey, Yami looked to the former Tercera, who looked both shocked and angered that her attack had done nothing against him. Sorry, but you three made the biggest mistake by choosing to fight me. He wrapped a second hand around Naruto's frame, and squeezed tighter. You see, as I grow angrier, I become stronger. Those weak little Seros of yours are like bug bites to me now, ha ha ha. The armor began to crack around Naruto's frame as Yami's fingers attempted to crush the life out of him. If only to make matters worse, he was now blasting streams of red energy from his mouth, attempting to knock Nell or Ulquiorra out of the air. No, I won't let this bastard. Yami felt his hands begin to heat up, and looked down to see Naruto growling. Huh? Still got some fight in you, huh? Naruto raised his head up to Yami and opened his mouth before letting out a primal roar. Yami's upper body was engulfed in a wave of orange, and he let go of Naruto. The Media Espada wasted no time, diving down and smashing into Yami's gut. Yami hollered in pain, raising a hand to grab a hold of the blonde. It was like trying to catch a fly for the gargantuan Arrancar, however. Naruto managed to evade the Zero Espada, and launched himself right into Yami's jaw, knocking him into a pillar as he slid across the sand. The pillar came down upon the giant as Naruto took a moment to catch his breath. Naruto. Nell was by the blonde's side in an instant. Are you alright? The blonde gave no reply, his attention focused on Yami's rising form. That moron just doesn't know when to quit, does he? He jettisoned towards his enemy once more. Naruto's getting reckless. Ulquiorra noted, he doesn't seem to be registering the fact that Yami's power is growing by the second. That, or he has a death wish. No. Nell stated, Naruto's intent on ending this. He was holding back, I can tell. The two watched the orange blur smash into Yami, who only fell back a few steps before attempting to swipe at the smaller Arrancar. Naruto quickly phased in front of Yami's face and dealt a snap kick to his nose. Yami howled in pain as he gripped his now bleeding nostrils, glaring daggers at Naruto. Damn you, Uzumaki, I'll be sure to make your death as painful and humiliating as. Schluck. Yami's words were cut off as he began to choke on the blood now spilling out of his throat. He watched as Naruto retracted his wrist blades, which seemed to be cracked from making contact with the giant Arrancar's arrow. GKKK, Ho-D? Naruto let out a battle cry as he flew straight into Yami's face, puncturing one of his pupils with his other wrist blade. Yami screamed before falling in a massive heap. Gurgling as blood began to pool around him. He looked up to the blue sky of Las Noches, only to see the Media Espada floating over him. I gave you a chance to surrender, Realgo. Naruto's eyes were blazing, though, I should have expected someone like you to go out fighting. You're more beast than most of us, anyway. I suppose the only way to finish you off is in such a manner, right? Yami's single functioning eye reflected confusion as he tried to remain focused on his opponent. Huh? I've lost a lot of power with this continuous fighting, Yami. I plan on getting that back. Yami attempted to scream as he felt Naruto rip out a portion of his throat before devouring it. The last thing he saw was his own blood dribbling down the chin of the Media Espada before his vision went black. Nell and Ulquiorra watched in mild terror and surprise as Naruto continued to eat off the now dead Zero Espada. After a few moments had passed, Naruto looked up from his impromptu meal, making eye contact with both before looking away. Nell was the first to approach the blonde. Naruto? Sorry about that. The blonde wiped his mouth. That in ages. I was drained in. Nell gave a nod, but said nothing in reply. Naruto looked to Ulquiorra. Thanks for the help, both of you. We didn't really do much of anything. Nell admitted with a frown, "You probably could have done more by yourself. You distracted him for a few seconds. That's all that matters." The media Espada replied, "Look. We've all lost a lot of strength, and we're going to need more power if we plan on helping the others in Karakura." Ulquiorra was the first to catch on to Naruto's train of thought. "You can't be serious." Nell's eyes widened. "Naruto, we're not just hollows any." "I know, but we need to get our strength back. Even if we're not just hollows anymore, we can gain strength if we eat. It's not civil, true. However, it's free energy now. If we don't feed on it, something else will. Aizen's powerful, we all know that, and with the Haugoku he'll be even more of a threat." Naruto looked to the steadily cooling body of Yami. "It's eat or be eaten. We're not just fighting Shinigami anymore. We're fighting Aizen. He's stronger than a normal captain, that much is obvious." Ulquiorra and Nell both looked to their comrade, who was giving them an almost pleading look. Then they looked to Yami's body. Harabel panted heavily as she struggled to keep her massive sword pointed towards Stark. Her vision kept blurring as she attempted to stay focused on the powerful Espada, who didn't seem all that eager to move from his spot in the air. "Why are you doing this, Harabel?" The Tercera gritted her teeth. "Some things are worth fighting for, even if they seem foolish." Stark sighed while running a hand over his hair. He had been caught off guard when Tia had suddenly blasted him with a jet of water. Had she not done so, he may have scored a direct hit on the captain with the floral kimono. He quickly called Lilynette to his side, and the two joined together, calling forth Los Lobos. Stark raised his pistol to his lower-ranking peer and frowned. Naruto made his choice, Harabel. You know that he was taking a path that would lead to his demise. "Bastard! How can you say such things about him?" Harabel shouted. Stark seemed surprised by her sudden outburst. It wasn't like Harabel to. The usually calm Tercera was now flooding the area with a maelstrom of emotions. "You know as well as I do that he was in the right by fighting against Aizen. He may have been rash, and he may have been taking a great risk, but he was right. We're fighting for a man that is biting off more than he can chew." Stark looked to the town below. Or the fake town below. Naruto was willing to fight for a bunch of humans, Harabel. Humans who have no idea what is going on right now. Not just humans but Shinigami, and for us. The blonde shot back, even if he's dead, that doesn't mean we can just give up on his vision. Why must we continue to shed blood over such a frivolous matter like the differences between Shinigami and Arrancar, and for the desires of a madman? Stark's gaze wandered away from Harabel, and onto the three Fracciones standing a good distance away. He had to admire those three girls. Despite the fact that they were in the presence of such powerful Ryotsu, they were maintaining their composure. From what Stark had gathered from Harabel, she and her Fraccione were defecting, and joining the Shinigami. Apache had convinced Harabel to lay down her arms against the young captain of the 10th Division, and decided to try and stop the Primera from fighting as well, albeit with more physical methods. Now that the young captain, along with three other Shinigami who had been battling against Harabel and her trio of Fraccione, were fighting against Barragan's forces. The two captains that had been engaged in combat with Stark and Lilynette had returned to the general commander's side, watching the roaring prison of flames that held Aizen within. They may as well have stabbed themselves with their own blades. It'd be a lot less painful compared to what the Segunda Espada could do. To make matters that much more difficult for the forces of Seireitei, Aizen had somehow summoned a flood of high-level Adjukas and Manos Grande. Even with the recent arrival of the Vizards, the constant onslaught of hollows kept them busy enough that they were unable to team up against the other Espada. Stark returned his gaze to the Tercera and fixed his aim. "Sorry, Harabel. Taking on Aizen is suicide, no matter how we go about it." "Coward." Harabel ground out, readying herself to move. Cerro Metroletta. With a squeeze of his pistol's trigger, a flurry of Cerro blasts shot out with incredible speed. Harabel barely managed to move away as the storm of energy lit up the sky in blue. He let go of the trigger and looked around, knowing full well that Harabel wasn't able to sustain this game of evading his attacks for too long. She had been fighting the Primera for almost 10 minutes now, and Stark had yet to sustain any serious injury from her. Stark. Maybe Harabel's right. Lilynette, not now. Looking down to one of the pistols that Lilynette had transformed into, Stark could feel the anger emanating from his subordinate and counterpart. "No. I won't be quiet about this. She's right, Naruto Nichin. Ichi was better than us. He was brave, and he went against Aizen when no one else would." Stark couldn't help but feel her emotions flow into him, and a wave of sorrow soon washed over him. How can we fight back when we know we're fighting for the wrong side? How can killing someone like Naruto, killing family, how is that right? Stark forced down the urge to shed tears. In their resurrección, the two were one. Her emotions were his, and vice versa. Lilynette, look, I didn't want to, but he what? He was going against Aizen. Good. Aizen's probably going to kill us when this is all over anyway. He could hear her voice shudder as she continued. He was our family, Stark. My brother. He cared for us, and I know you cared about him too. Stark grit his teeth and returned his attention to the battle. Harabel had yet to reappear, though it had probably been only a few seconds at most since he stopped firing. He scanned the area, trying to feel for a possible ripple in the air that gave away her position. Please, Stark. Let's just stop. I don't want to lose anyone else. I don't want to be alone again. Alone? Stark, you lazy bum, when are we going to train? It's been a whole week since we've done any training, come on. Naruto. Stark-san, I thank you for always helping me out in Mundo. Even though I'm the Tercera. It's good to have someone I can trust out there. Nalil. Look, Lilinette, just because you're a Fraccione doesn't mean you can hide behind Stark all the time. How do you expect to get stronger if you don't know how to fight on your own? Hell, even the dumbass Naruto knows how to fight well. Grimjow. We have to maintain order in Las Noches, Stark. I look forward to working beside you, Primera Espada. Harabel. Lilinette, stop bugging me about training all the time. I'm busy too, you know, go. I don't know, bug Naruto or something. I'll help you with your Cero later, alright? I promise? Apache. Damn it. Lilinette was getting to him. He let his pistol fall to his side, fine. It was at that moment that he felt Harabel's presence behind him. He whirled around and ducked under a horizontal swipe from her blade. She backed up quickly before lunging forward, intending to impale him. He jumped to the side and grabbed her by the shoulder, enough. Harabel glared at him for a moment, but loosened up as she noticed that the Primera had put his guns back in their holsters. Stark. You're right. Stark spoke solemnly. I don't know if I deserve to be forgiven, and I don't expect you to give me that chance, but... He sighed as he looked into her eyes. I'm finding it harder and harder to fight this war. I'm tired of lying to myself. Harabel's expression indication of surprise, her eyebrows going up a fraction. You mean that? Yeah. Harabel lowered her blade. I apologize for attacking you, Stark. Come off it. I probably deserved it. Harabel glanced down to the two pistols holstered on either side of Stark's hips, the smallest of smiles appearing on her lips. I imagine you had something to do with this? The pistols shook a bit within their holsters. We're on your side, Harabel. The distinct sound of 3 sonido bursts could be heard, and the Primera and Tercera turned to see Apache, Mila Rose, and Sunday to Sunday all hovering warily while keeping their eyes on Stark. Harabel-sama? It's alright, Mila. It would appear that Lilinette's amazing powers of persuasion have reached the ears of Stark once more. Once more, Stark groused. What's that supposed to mean? Despite the fact they were in the middle of a battleground, the Tercera and her 3 Fraccione, along with Lilinette, couldn't help but let out a laugh. Sunday to Sunday eventually spoke. With all due respect, Stark-sama, Lilinette has a way of getting what she wants, especially with you. Stark grumbled as he held up one of the pistols. You mean by whining? Oi, I don't whine, retorted the pistol. Stark rolled his eyes before returning his gaze to the others once more. Right. Well, I suppose if we're defecting, we better do everything we can to get rid of Aizen. The echoing roar of over several hundred hollows could be heard, and the group turned to the gigantic rip in realms, only for them to all freeze in place. Harabel cursed as she watched the Garganta grow larger. What? I didn't think that Aizen would call Wunderweisand. That thing, so early. A large mass of white slowly made its way out of the Garganta, bringing with it an ominous feeling of dread. Soon a massive white entity that easily dwarfed any Ajukas of Mundo was standing outside of the rip in space. Looming over the flaming prison that held Aizen in place, off to the side of it was none other than Wunderweiss himself, who seemed to be looking off in no particular direction. Fura, wow. Is that really what it looks like? Apache voiced in awe. It's bigger than I thought. Fura had one large eye, and a bulbous body that stood on 4 legs. Its back was covered in pointed, hair-like projections, and it had masks of manos grande in place of what were presumably fingernails. The behemoth opened what appeared to be its mouth, and spewed out a black mass that began to flood the fake Karakura below. Within said black ooze were hundreds upon hundreds of masks that belonged to even more manos grande. Slowly, the gigantic lower-class hollows rose from the ooze, screeching out as they marched towards their Shinigami targets. This is insane. There's already too many of them as it is, Harabel stated. Stark was the first to realize why Fura had truly appeared when the beast began to take in air. It's going to free Aizen from those flames. We've got to stop it. The 2 Espada blurred away, leaving the 3 Fraccione behind as they sped towards the gigantic hollow-producing beast. Ooh, hey, Kensai, look, those Espada are attacking the big blob. Kensai took a moment to look away from the dissipating body of yet another slain Ajukas, and raised an eyebrow. Huh? Mashiro, what are... The former 9th Division captain blinked in confusion. Hey, Mashiro, does that one Espada woman look familiar to you? Mashiro scratched her head and stuck her tongue out as she thought, I don't know. Hiyori phased behind the duo, hollow mask on. Hey, quit spacing out. We've got to get rid of these bastards. Kensai turned to the pig-tailed vizard. Hey, Hiyori, any idea what those 2 Espada are up to? I thought we were fighting against them. Of course we are, idiot. Why are? Hiyori's words caught in her throat as she cocked her head to the side before pulling her mask up. Are they attacking that big hollow? From the looks of it, yeah. Does that mean they're on our side? Ushiro asked. Are they good guys too? The green-haired wizard's question was given an answer as the two high-ranked espada blasted at the massive hollow beast with their sero. Fura roared in pain as it was knocked back. The air it had been building up being exhaled in a random direction, blowing down a few of the smaller skyscrapers in the process. Hiyori cocked her head to the side. Why are they attacking their own? It's because they're defecting from Aizen. The three wizards turned around to see Sakura Haruno. Shikai activated. Huh? Hey, where did you come from? Sakura gave a nod to Hiyori. We got in here with some help from a few of the Arrancar on our side no more than a minute or two ago. From what Shikamaru of the 10th Division told me. Most of the Arrancar remaining are in support of Naruto Uzumaki and his efforts now. She turned to the still flaming prison that was being maintained by Yamamoto. Apparently Aizen wasn't as popular with them as we thought. The trio gave Sakura a surprised look, then Kensai began. Naruto. Hey, he's that Arrancar that was working with Urahara, right? The same guy. Hiyori replied. Well, let's finish cleaning up these hollows, then take care of the bigger fish. She then pulled down her mask and rocketed off to a mass of Manos without another word. Sakura rolled her shoulders a bit, the chains of her two gauntlets clanking together as she turned to Harabel and Stark's direction. Perhaps the Espada aren't as bad as Seirei thought they were. Kensai gave a grim smile and nodded. Yeah. He turned to Mashiro. Oi, Mashiro, I'm going to take care of that beast. Don't go and get yourself killed with me not covering your back. Hey, wait for me. Mashiro shouted as she took off after the other two wizards. Ooh, Sunday to Sunday, watch it. The Serpentine Arrancar used a quick sonito, dodging a bala that missed her by milliseconds. Apache and Mila Rose appeared by her side, facing towards their opponent. I got to admit, I wasn't expecting Wunderweiss to be this tough. Apache grumbled. How come we never saw him fight like this before? Mila Rose hefted her sword up. Wasn't he the only one of us that was altered by Aizen? Makes sense then. Apache flexed a palm, producing a bala. We'll just have to overwhelm him. Oh. Wunderweiss's Ryotsu skyrocketed suddenly before he blasted a sero from his open mouth. The three girls split off in different directions as the purple beam of light cut through the air. The three Frasion quickly turned sharply, flying towards the blonde-haired Arrancar. Apache clenched a fist while channeling energy into it, and closed the distance between herself and Wunderweiss. Bam! The smoking trail of Wunderweiss could be seen as he was sent falling by Apache's Ryotsu enforced fist. Mila Rose trailed after the falling Arrancar, sword raised. She swung, only to meet resistance as Wunderweiss's hand caught her blade. You little, owa! Mila wasn't given a chance to react as she was kicked away like a rag doll. She barely registered that she was heading towards the road below, but before she could hit the concrete ground, she felt something stop her trajectory. A white mass uncoiled around the broadsword-bearing Arrancar. Mila, you shouldn't have been so reckless. Shut up, son. The two looked up to see Wunderweiss looking away, his attention focused on Apache. He didn't seem like he was intent on moving, however, instead charging up a bala in his hands before firing a volley of the energy blasts. Apache dropped down and veered to the right as the rainstorm of bala followed after her. She zipped between buildings, changed her direction several times. After what seemed like forever, she hung a left down a random road, stopping when she noticed the blasts had stopped suddenly. Huh. Looks like he lost me. She scanned the area and let out a sigh. I better take a minute and... Woo-ah! The antler-bearing Arrancar looked over her shoulder in time to see a purple lig. Son of A! The city below Sunday to Sunday and Mila lit up as a purple column of light shot up to the sky above. When the dust settled, there was no trace of their Frasion companion to be seen. Just a giant crater left in the wake by Wunderweiss's sero. Apache! Sunday to Sunday whispered, covering her mouth with a sleeve. No. Mila's grip on her sword tightened. Shit, he got her? Wunderweiss slowly floated back up to remaining two, a small, childlike smile on his face. Wah. You bastard. Mila sent Ryotsu through her blade and swung, creating an arc of red energy. Wunderweiss didn't even attempt to dodge, instead simply letting the wave of spiritual power crash into him. Ha. Mila felt her body tremble. I think. That may have done it. I put more than enough pow. Her words were cut off as Wunderweiss burst through the cloud of smoke, grabbing a hold of the lioness's face and throwing her to the city below. He continued his attack by rocketing down after her, a bala in hand. Mila's eyes widened in shock as she saw the projectile make its way straight for her. Boom! Mila. Sunday to Sunday cried out. She watched in terror as her other comrade was blasted to the ground with what appeared to be minimal effort on Wunderweiss's part. To make matters worse, the Arrancar was now looking her way. I can't fight him. Trying would be foolish. Sun's body shook as she felt Wunderweiss's Ryotsu flood the area. Still. I can't just give up. Her coiled body flexed a bit as she gathered power into both hands, a dark pink aura surrounding her. Apache. Mila rose. This is for you. Her eyes flashed for a moment before she thrust her palms forward. Bala Grande. The supersized bala crackled and sparked as it shot with unprecedented speed, smashing and driving Wunderweiss through the air. Sunday to Sunday didn't waste time, fading away and reappearing a good distance behind the Espada-level Arrancar. She raised a hand, and the ball of spiritual power erupted, sending Wunderweiss her way. She coiled her tail before spinning around and slamming it into him. At least, that should have been how her attack went. What? Wunderweiss had managed to get a hold of her tail, and pulled her towards him before clotheslining her. She was out like a light, dangling by his hand. He chucked her to the ground by the crater where he had defeated Apache, and gave a low hum as he charged up a Sero. Whoosh! Wunderweiss, Sero still charging in his mouth, turned to see several pointed objects flying at him. The next thing he knew, he was blasted away by 3 powerful explosions, and was sent for the umpteenth time through the air, spiraling down to the ground several hundred yards away from where the 3 Fraction had landed. Ooh, nice shot. Whatever, go check and see if those 3 are alright. Tell that one captain lady to help if she's needed. What about Orihime? You want to put her in the middle of the battlefield, Shinigami. Rukia gave a serious expression. She's not helpless, Grimmjow, but the Kuchiki cut herself off as Grimmjow gave her an annoyed look. She glanced down to the 3 fallen Fraction and then back to the former SXTA. What about you, Grimmjow? Grimmjow was currently reforming the spikes in his right arm after shooting a set at Wunderweiss. He flexed his arm a bit after the spikes jutted out, and looked to the spot where his opponent had crashed. Nah, I have a bone to pick with that kid. I may not be their teacher or like Naruto, but anyone who goes and attacks those 3 doesn't get away with it. Harabel would never allow it, and neither would Naruto. Rukia gave a smirk. Right, I won't be far if you need help. Won't be necessary. I've been itching for a fight. Wunderweiss just drew the unlucky number. With a semi-maniacal grin, the SXTA blasted off to engage the likely still conscious Wunderweiss. The Kuchiki girl dropped down to the rubble and jogged over to where she had seen Sunday to Sunday get taken down. She knelt down beside the Arrancar, relieved to see her still breathing. Hey, get a hold of yourself. Sunday to Sunday opened a single eye, resting it on Rukia, Shinigami. Take it easy. You took a real beating just a little while ago. She gave the Arrancar a once-over before returning her gaze to Sun's face. Does anything feel broken? Sunday to Sunday slowly flexed her arms, fingers, and all the rest of her joints before slowly shaking her head. No, thankfully. Apache. Mila rose. She started to rise up, but was held down by Rukia. Let go, I have to. Relax, I'll go check on them. Just don't move if you can avoid it. I'll be right back. Ukenpachi laughed like he had just been told that an all-out brawl was to be held in Seirei. He cut through hollows with little trouble, bull rushing straight through the massive beasts and brushing off their attacks like it was natural to him. Come on, is that all you got? Gahahaha, man, Zaraki Taiko sure makes this easier for us. Uryu turned to Renji and gave a weak nod. Agreed. The 2 turned their attention to a group of Ajukas heading their way, one raising Zabumaru and swiping, the other raising his bow and firing. Ooh, look sharp, Dondoshaka. We can't let Renji-kun and Ishida-kun outdo us. Right. Bawawu. The Arrancar duo along with their gigantic pet made their way towards a horde of Manos Grande, each holding their unique Zanpakuto in hand. Ooh, huh? Apache's vision came to her slowly as she returned to consciousness. She felt a strange sensation of warmth run down her midsection, and looked up to see none other than Orihime, tears streaking her cheeks, smiling while looking to her. The warmth faded, and Apache noted 2 streaks of light return to one of the girl's hairpin pieces. Oh Orihime? Wah, Apache? You're alright. Orihime globbed the Arrancar girl by the head and was practically sobbing. I thought you were dead, and I asked Chad to pull you out from the stones and your body was. The orange-haired teen sniffled while rubbing her eyes. Sorry. You were missing a piece of your stomach and your left leg was. She shed a few tears, her smile becoming brighter. I'm just happy you're alright now. Apache grunted while sitting up. Wait. Who got me out of the rubble? Orihime pointed to Chad, who was standing a short distance away. Yo. Apache blinked before nodding to the human. Thanks for the help. Don't mention it. Your friend was hit by a bala, but I think she's okay. Chad jerked a thumb to a weary-looking Mila Rose, who was currently being attended by Izan. Hey, Mila, you got your ass handed to you as well, huh? Mila looked up from her spot and growled. What was that? If I recall correctly, you were the one who got blown apart, Apache. Mila Rose-san, please don't move, Izan fretted, trying to restrain the angered Arrancar. Ooh, I think that's the last of them. All that's left is him now. Soifun looked behind her to see Shikamaru, Bikuya, Kuritsuchi behind her. Where are the others? Shikamaru nodded towards the blazing flames of Yamamoto's Shikai-crafted prison, and to the massive outpour of hollows still entering the battleground. The Fracione from this Espada's group are all dead, I guess. Omeda Fukutaichu just took out the last of them, from the looks of things. One of the pillars was damaged, but I heard Hitsugaya Taiko say the others should hold as long as we keep them guarded. If we can just take out that guy. The four turned their attention to Berrigan, who was still sitting in his throne, watching them with a bored expression. He seemed to be waiting for one of them to make the first move, seeing as he didn't look ready to get up from his throne made of bones. I think that he's number 2. The 2 that defected from Aizen are the first and third, Shikamaru stated. We'll have to be careful. Berrigan decided to finally speak at that point. You all intend to fight me, EH? He lifted his chin up from his palm and grimaced. How despicable. You shinerful, yet you will gang up on a single opponent. He drew out his double-sided axe. I'll teach you maggots what happens to those who challenge a god. Kuritsuchi gave an amused grin. Another overconfident Arankar? Oh, this one appears stronger than the one I fought before. He drew out his Zanpakuto. Nara, I want you to attack that Espada immediately. I'll observe its actions and decide to go about procuring it. Kuritsuchi Taiko, with all due respect, I think it'd be best if I avoid direct combat. Shikamaru replied with a somewhat uneasy look. Nara's right, Kuritsuchi. Soifun added. His abilities are more for support and being able to get around the enemy's defenses. Kuchiki, let's engage him directly. Don't give me orders, Byakuya stated calmly, though he drew out his own blade as she turned towards him. Berrigan scoffed. Fools. Rushing to their own deaths. He spun his axe once before facing it towards the ground. Rot, arrogante. Ufura gave out a final cry of anguish before it exploded, chunks of its flesh spattering the city below as Harabel's high-pressured blast of water pierced its hide. Yeesh, Harabel. Stark grumbled as he stared at his now-stained uniform. Could have given me a warning, don't you think? Harabel swiped her giant sword, the gooey blood of Fura flying of its edge as she turned to her comrade. It couldn't be helped, Stark. TCH, whatever. Let's go see how the rest of those Shinigami are holding up against Aizen and the others. Harabel turned her attention to the floating mass of flames. I wonder why the Commander General hasn't burned Aizen to ashes yet. Maybe he can't. I doubt that. Even Aizen was wary of Yamamoto. Harabel noted, there has to be a reason. It's probably not that far off from being true, Harabel-san. The two Espada looked to their right to see Sakura flying towards them. Sakura-san. Sakura gave the Tercera a nod. I'm surprised you're helping us. Sometimes the ones being commanded have to know when enough is enough. Following a general blindly into a battle can be reckless, especially when he throws his soldiers before him without batting an eyelash. Speaking of which, Stark began, turning towards the fires once more. I don't like the feeling I'm getting all of the sudden. The air began to grow heavy, a vaguely familiar Ryotsu signature rising out from the background. The two Espada and the medical Shinigami felt their breathing hitch suddenly as the feeling of suffocation overcame them for a few seconds. Where is that Ryotsu signature coming from? As if to answer Sakura's question, the flames suddenly began to wave madly before dying out with a sudden wind created by an overwhelming spiritual pressure. The area grew deadly quiet for several moments. It was as if everyone had stopped their fights, intent on seeing what this strange new power was. All eyes were focused on the smoky wisps of Yamamoto's destroyed prison of fire, where 3 figures stood in midair. How? I have no idea, Harabel. Stark whispered. Looks like Aizen was keeping an ace up his sleeve. Sakura felt her body trembling as the Ryotsu washed over the plain. That's Aizen. H's Ryotsu. It's not. Damn it. This just got a hell of a lot more difficult for us, Stark muttered. Aizen-sama. You changed, your Ryotsu. Jin and Tucson both faced towards a figure covered in what appeared to be a white carapace. 2 black eyes turned towards the two. It would appear that the Haugoku is finally giving its response to my will. He turned towards the group that had gathered before him, among them being Kyoraku, Yukitaki, Komamura, Hitsugaya, Shinji, Love Kawa, and Ichigo. In the distance Aizen noted that some of the vice-captains and a few of the other wizards were standing in the background, likely to provide whatever support they could. Futile, really, they don't stand a chance now. 2 more figures blurred into view, and Aizen gave out an amused hum. I suspected this would happen. It's a shame that 2 of my 3 strongest warriors have decided to go and betray me because of some fool's ideals. Harabel glared at the transformed Aizen. Bite your tongue, Aizen. Naruto was 100 times greater of a person you'll ever hope to be. At least he had honor. Honor? Aizen repeated. What a trivial thing. Placing such reverence on something that often leads to one's own demise is such a major flaw amongst both Shinigami and Hollow alike, it would seem. He placed a hand on his hilt. I managed to surpass those limits, however. Enough, Yamamoto roared, stifling the conversation with a wave of his overpowering Ryotsu. Aizen, this has been long overdue. The head of the Godate 13 glanced over to the Arrancar. It's normally against Soul Society's beliefs to side with Arrancar. But seeing as we have a common enemy, I will not object to your involvement. Stark gave a withering glare to the bearded Shinigami captain. Gee, thanks. Glad our help is so greatly appreciated. Stark, save it. Harabel scolded, now isn't the time. Ichigo took a step forward, but a hand took a hold of his sleeve. Hey, what? He turned to see Shinji holding onto him. Hold up, Ichigo. It'd be best if you hang back. What are you talking? He's right, Kurosaki. Ichigo turned to look at Stark. What do you mean? Stark turned to face the teen. From what I understand, you are the only one among us that has not gazed upon Kyoku Suigetsu, correct? Kyoku Suigetsu? Aizen's Zanpakuto. Harabel answered. It holds the power of absolute hypnosis over any who gaze upon it. Her expression was stern as she met the boy's brown eyes. As long as you have not seen his blade, you're the best bet we have at truly bringing him down. So what, am I supposed to just sit here and wait for an opening? Ichigo growled, clearly upset with this revelation. It would probably be wise. Ichigo turned to none other than Yamamoto. You're kidding. I most certainly am not. The old captain responded. Wait for your chance, and be certain that your sword will strike true. This is bullshit, Ichigo grumbled, but he didn't seem ready to argue any further on the matter, seeing as he set his blade to his side and looked forward. What about Tusen and Jin? We'll handle them. Shinji answered with a grin. I've been meaning to get even with those two as well. Meanwhile, Jin was simply smirking while the combatants made ready. The air is just full of killer intent all of the sudden. It's kind of stifling, Tusen frowned to his comrade. Jin, stay focused. Right. Jin drew his blade. I suppose it'd be bad if I got caught off guard against one of them, right? Tusen made no further comment, and Aizen simply stood before them, unmoving. The silver-haired captain's grin faltered a little. It's too bad Naruto isn't here. He'd probably be cracking a joke right about now. Naruto, Nell, and Ulquiorra dashed through the black void of the Garganta. Nell taking lead since she had expended the least amount of power with all the fighting that had occurred in Hueco Mundo. Her Ryotsu created a clean-cut path that the trio used to traverse the bridge between worlds. Uzumaki. Naruto looked to his side to see Ulquiorra. What's up? How do you plan on taking on Aizen? He has used Kyoku Suigetsu on all of us, even if we weren't aware of it. We're all vulnerable to his absolute hypnosis. The Quadra asked, even with all of your power, you'll be useless if you cannot lay a finger on him. Naruto gave a grin. Don't worry about that. I got an idea that might work. Nell glanced over her shoulder. What's your idea? Well, it involves me working in synchronization with the demon inside of me. The blonde replied, I kind of thought about it, and while I may be subject to Aizen's hypnosis, Kyuubi never was. The Kyuubi? That fox demon inside of you? The media Espada nodded to Ulquiorra. Yeah. If I allow Kyuubi to guide me in battle, we can avoid his illusions. He may even be able to snap me out of them completely. Nell's eyes widened. Is that possible? In theory it is. Think about it, Aizen's Shikai allows him to manipulate one's senses. However, if those senses are abruptly cut off from the illusion, or another force, such as the Kyuubi's Ryotsu, interrupts the sensory exchange, I'll be alright. Ulquiorra gave what Naruto guessed was a skeptical look. Are you certain of this? Nope. Naruto answered. It's worth taking the gamble, however. I suppose that's the best we can hope for. Nell gave a sigh, a small smile adorning her face. Naruto-kun, we'll do what we can to help. Naruto gave a smile instinctively to his partner, but it slipped and fell to a frown. Nell. It may not be a good idea for you, or almost anyone else for that matter, to fight Aizen directly once I'm there. Not a good idea. The former Tercera's eyes narrowed, and Naruto quickly recognized Nell's serious expression as she spoke. I'm not letting you fight him alone. Nell-chan, I can't fight him while worrying. Naruto. Do not use that reasoning with me. The green-haired beauty shouted. I will fight Aizen, or anyone who gets in my way, regardless of their supposed strength. Do you understand? There is more at stake than my life, you know that? Of course he did. It didn't mean he agreed with her. If it was his choice, he'd fight Aizen alone, no one interfering. It'd take a huge load of his shoulders that way. We're approaching the fake Karakura town. Ulquiorra noted. Nell faced ahead and noticed a faint light ahead. Naruto steeled himself. He was ready to face whatever it was waiting for him on the other side. He hoped he was, at least. In the distance, a fight between Jin and Rangaku was coming to a close, the 10th Division vice-captain having met defeat shortly after her captain. Hitsugaya had tried, and failed, to take down the former 3rd Division captain, and was now lying on a slab of rubble, barely alive with a hole in the chest. Even further away, it was the battle between Kensai and Hisagi against Tusen, though it too was reaching an end from the looks of things. Kensai had managed to deal a fatal blow to Tusen with the help of his Bankai, Tekken Tachikaze. Mishiro had been taken out of commission shortly after the former 9th Division captain used his ace in the hole. adorning a mask and gaining powers like that of a wizard. The only other combatants still active were Baragan, Soifun, Kuritsuchi, Shikamaru, and Byakuya. After noticing the roof crumbling to pieces shortly after the Segunda Espada's release, Shikamaru had deduced that getting close to the Arrancar would be incredibly dangerous. This is most intriguing. The ability to accelerate time on any object, living or otherwise. The 12th Division captain spoke as he rubbed his chin. It'd be great if I could get that beast alive for examination, but I'm afraid that may be nearly impossible at the moment. Will you stop thinking about your twisted research projects? We are in the middle of a battle, Soifun growled. As it stands, everything we have tried so far has failed. Kido, your Shikai's poisonous gas, Kuchiki's Shikai and Bankai. Baragan let out a chuckle, his voice echoing through the hollow, skeleton body of his resurrection. So, even the gods of death themselves fear time, Shikamaru gripped his kukiri-shaped Shikai. How can we fight a guy who can't be touched? Soifun grit her teeth. This wasn't good at all. She was unable to use any of her skills, and releasing her Bankai would be a reckless move in her current situation. However, if she was able to find a way to slip past that damned Espada's powers. The petite captain's eyes widened. That's it. She turned to Shikamaru. Nara, I have a plan. I'm going to need your assistance, however. Yamamoto wasn't too happy with the current state of things. Kyoraku and Yukitaki had been taken down by Aizen, the two attempting to double-team him and failing thanks to the hypnotic powers of the enemy's Zanpakuto. Hitsugaya was down for the count, and now Komamura had fallen after Aizen had quickly dispatched the canine Soul Reaper. Then Kenpachi tried to attack Aizen, only to be cut down with a single flash of steel. At the moment, the commander of the Godate 13 was watching as Shinji, Love, Harabel, and Stark teamed up against the traitor. Then Lisa Yatamaru joined in along with Hiyori, but those two were cut down almost instantly. Within minutes, the last of the forces protecting Seireiti were before Yamamoto's eyes. While any good leader should not be afraid to put his subordinates out before him, it didn't help him to see the allies of Seireiti fall so quickly. Oi, Yamamoto-ji-san. The bearded Shinigami turned to Ichigo, who was frowning while staring intensely towards Aizen. What is it, Kurosaki? I don't think those four are going to be able to last much longer. Hiriko's strong, sure, and so is Love, but they're reaching their limits. So are the two Espada. He gripped Tensa Zangetsu tightly. If they get beaten, I cannot allow you to get sucked into the fight, Kurosaki. Yamamoto spoke. You are, in simple terms, our last defense. Should I fail, which I don't intend on doing, it will be your duty to take down Aizen with whatever forces are left. Ichigo gave a nod. He had only caught the briefest glimpses of Yamamoto's power in the past when he had rescued Rukia, and that was from a great distance. He knew from word of mouth by the other Shinigami that the elderly man's powers were fire-based. Still, he had never gotten a true glimpse of what the 1st Division captain could do. What about the others that are fighting? Ichigo questioned, looking to the fight between the Segunda and the fight between Grimmjow and Wunderweiss. What about them? Let them continue. If they fall, we'll be responsible for finishing whatever is left. Ichigo nodded and continued to watch the seemingly hopeless fight against Aizen. Harabel backed away, breathing heavily as she held her side. A clean cut running across her right midsection was bleeding copious amounts of crimson fluid, and she was pretty sure that if she hadn't moved when she had, she'd be dead. You alright? Harabel turned to her side to see the wizard she had learned was named Love facing her. She gave a nod, deciding to not comment on the familiarity of the man for now. Yes. Though I can't help but feel that he's just toying with us. The two watched as Stark and Shinji were trying to get the traitorous Shinigami from any angle possible, only meeting with failure. Aizen blocked, dodged, and countered with incredible ease, and his transformation seemed to have given him enhanced powers all around. We have to stop him. Something tells me if we let him go for too long. Harabel grit her teeth. If it wasn't for his damned Kyoku Suigetsu. Shinji and Stark quickly appeared by Love and Harabel's side, both looking worn down. Stark grumbled while holding up Lilynette, likely asking if she was alright. She had been firing non-stop, and it was likely taxing for the two to continually fire Sero blasts at the rate they had been. Hey, Love. I think it's time to use Sakunon. Love raised an eyebrow. You sure? Shinji gave a nod. It's now or never. Love gave no verbal reply, instead holding his Zanpakuto at his side. Shinji floated forward a bit, directing his attention towards Aizen. Alright, Aizen. This is where it ends for you. Oh, how so, Shinji Hiriko? Aizen asked, his voice laced with its usual calm yet somewhat mocking tone. From the looks of it, I'd say you're all running on the last legs of your strength. Shinji held his sword out in front of him and smirked. If you think that your sword is so special because it's able to manipulate your opponent's senses, then you've got another thing coming to you, Aizen. The wizard pointed the blade downward. Collapse, Sakunon. Aizen watched with mild curiosity as Shinji's blade transformed. The pommel now had a law and the blade itself was thinner and had 5 holes within it. What was most peculiar, however, was the way the blade spun around Shinji's hand without him ever holding onto it. An interesting shape your shikai has there, Aizen commented. Isn't it? Too bad you can't have it, huh? Shinji joked. Take a good look at this blade, Aizen. It'll be the cause of your undoing. Aizen detected a sudden aroma in the air. It was rather pleasing, but it triggered an alarm in the transforming Shinigami's mind. The wizard noticed Aizen's sudden unease. Oh. Looks like something isn't right all of a sudden, huh? Aizen watched as Shinji and the others, as well as the ground below him, spun upward, as though he had been lifted and turned upside down. All the while Shinji continued to spin his blade around his wrist. Welcome to the inverted world, Aizen. Without any further explanation, Shinji and Love dashed forward, swords in hand. Aizen made to block, but felt a sudden pain run down his back and thigh. He whirled around, only to be blasted by a jet of water from below. Inverted world. Aizen thought. I guess I may have underestimated Hiriko by never learning his Shikai's ability. No matter, though. This will be mere child's play. Meanwhile, Stark and Harabel watched in mild amazement as Shinji managed to deliver another slash across Aizen's body, this time in the chest. Aizen, however, was looking in the opposite direction, and blocking away from where Shinji was aiming. What? How is he doing that? Sakunade's special ability warps the visual senses of the opponent. Up and down, left and right, the direction one is facing and where one is attacking, they're all switched. The two Espada looked to Love, who was taking a moment to catch his breath. Is that what he meant by the inverted world? How come we're not seeing this? Shinji can target specific opponents with his Shikai, so it's actually really helpful in a team. Love replied with a smile. We may be able to pull this off yet. Stark hummed and thought. Optical illusion, huh? Aizen will figure it out sooner than later. We better finish him quickly. Right. I can't agree more. With that, the trio flew towards Aizen, intent on taking him down. Baragan was growing more irritated by the minute. He hadn't expected such a weak Shinigami to have such an annoying power at his disposal. The former king of Hueco Mundo glared at the young Shinigami standing a fair distance away, a small kukri blade in hand, a calm expression on his face. It must be aggravating. Baragan cocked his head to the side. What are you talking about, boy? I'm talking about the situation you're in. You see, my Zanpakuto is the most ideal choice when going against you. Your powers are negated against mine as long as I'm within my shadow world. Time is absolute, don't think that you're safe from me, Shinigami. Baragan retorted, hefting his axe. I've dealt with your type plenty. You think you've got the advantage, only to slip up or make an error in judgment. Shikamaru cracked his neck a bit while giving a look of indifference to the Espada, says the Arankar that's gloating about his powers. I'm not the one who's trying to avoid direct combat. The Nara boy gave a grunt, point taken. However, Kasukakuge's not made for offense as you can tell. It's more of a support-based weapon. Baragan let out a grumble. Support, you say? The Espada felt a sudden rise in spiritual pressure directly behind him. Turning around, he saw a cloud of pink flower petals rushing towards him. How did... The Segunda's words were cut off as he was engulfed in a sea of flower blossoms, but within a few seconds the petals had suddenly vanished, appearing as though they had turned to dust. Raising his now scratched and damaged skull up, he faced Byakuya Kuchiki, who stood within the realm of Shikamaru's Shikai and the battleground. You see, Kasukakuge's power allows me or anyone I permit to enter a small pocket universe that I have control of. The best part of it, however, is that time doesn't flow the same way as it would here. That includes your powers, Espada. Shikamaru swiped his blade, and the rip between dimensions closed up. Seconds later, the Nara reappeared only a few feet away from the Arankar. I'm immune to your time acceleration powers as long as I'm in here. Judging from the way your powers work, while they do work well, they aren't instantaneous. Baragan let loose a ripple of Ryotsu. Don't act like you are above me, boy. I am a god. There is none that can surpass my powers. They are absolute, and even you will suit me to them in due time. All that bleed and breath face the same fate. Shikamaru's face morphed into an annoyed frown. Obviously you weren't listening. I said your powers aren't effective in my dimension unless I let you enter. HMMPH. That may be, but what good will standing around do you? I've got all of eternity on my side. I can wait. Oh, don't get me wrong. I don't plan on sitting around here. Time still flows here, but it's slower. The only reason it appears the same is because I've created a portal between my Zanpakuto's Shikai and this realm. In truth, time is actually flowing at about 1/3 the rate it normally would. That's impossible. Baragan growled. No, it's not. It's Kasukakuge. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but in my world, I'm the closest thing there is to a god. 3 more portals opened up around Baragan, and he was soon facing Byakuya, Kuritsuchi, and Soifun. He noticed that the petite captain of the 2nd Division was now holding a large weapon of sorts, while the eccentric captain of the 12th Division was speaking in a hushed tone, his hands glowing with yellow light. Byakuya was being encircled by his Zanpakuto's pink petals, looking ready to release the floral storm upon the Espada. "It's over, Espada," Shikamaru stated as he began to charge a ball of red flame in his hands. It all happened suddenly. Miyuri shot a bolt of yellow light, what appeared to be Hado number 63. Shikamaru followed up with Hado number 31. Both Kido spells crashed into Baragon, albeit with weakened force. Baragon, while singed by the two volatile Kido, seemed for the most part fine. Then he was engulfed once more by a torrent of Gakuya's flower petal-shaped blades. He roared in pain as he felt his bones being cut apart, but as expected, Gakuya's attack eventually stopped, the petals once again fading into nothingness. Ha! Ha! Baragon looked up, his body mangled and beaten. "No, I'm the god of Hueco Mundo. I will not lose to ants such as yourselves." A black fog blew out from beneath, engulfing the surrounding area. However, the black miasma simply blew past the 4 openings within the shadow world of Kasukakage. Baragon noticed this and let out a roar of annoyance. "How? You should all be rotting away by now." Shikamaru shook his head. "Like I said, this dimension is separate from the one you're in, even in terms of the flow of time. I control all aspects of what enters and leaves this dimension, time included." "That's not possible. Time flows without restraint." "Yeah, but it flows as it does only in this dimension. In the realm one I'm in, it flows differently, and since I control the dimension, you can't do anything to me or anyone within it." Shikamaru twirled his kukri as he continued. "The only downside of this ability is obviously the fact that things are happening more quickly here. The longer I take to react, the greater the chance that my allies are killed while I do nothing. 20 minutes in my world is an hour to those not within my dimension. That and the longer I use my shikai, the more energy that's depleted from me. If I run out of power while I'm in this little pocket universe, then I'm stuck, unless I can find some way to gather enough power to reactivate my shikai." The two stared each other down, one infuriated, the other annoyed for having to repeat an explanation on their powers several times now. "Nara, it's time." Shikamaru Faho hefted her massive bankai up. "Roger that, Soifin Taiko." Shikamaru held his kukri out in front of him and opened up several more portals. Beads of sweat began forming on his brow from the strain of ripping so many holes in the space-time continuum between the two realms. "Ready." Soifin lowered her weapon, which resembled a sort of portable missile launcher of sorts. She aimed through the small slot within the face shield before her, and grit her teeth. "Take this." The small portal where Soifin stood lit up with a blaze of fire, and the missile blasted off towards the skeletal Espada. Baragon quickly dodged the missile, which kept on going. It shot into one of the portals before vanishing. Seconds later, Baragon looked up to see the missile flying down towards him from one of the openings above. Again, Baragon dodged, and the missile shot into another rip in dimensions. "Even if it didn't dodge that projectile, it'd be destroyed by simply trying to reach me. It would explode before it ever made contact," Baragon stated as the missile disappeared within the shadows. "Really?" Baragon faced Soifin, whose eyes were locked with his empty sockets. "If that's true, then why are you avoiding it at all?" Baragon blurred away as the missile shot towards him once more before fading into the inky blackness of Shikamaru's shikai while Soifin continued. "I'll tell you why. It's because even if you can cause things to age rapidly, you'd still get hit by the explosion, regardless of how much you may slow down or deteriorate it. The fact is, you're vulnerable right now. You insect, all." He paused as he saw a flurry of petals flying towards him, and cursed his luck before dashing to the side, the petals missing their target before fading away as they neared him. Turning around sharply, he saw a flash of blue flames from yet another Kido spell. The flames dispersed before ever reaching him, but he realized all too late the error he made. A portal that was mere inches from his back began glowing. Damn! The sky erupted as Soifin's missile exploded. Grimjow felt a wave of heat wash over him as he jetted through the air. He spared a quick look into the air, and smirked. Damn, those Shinigami aren't as weak as they look, hey. He watched as he saw a small ball of fire plummeting to the ground. Looks like they got the old buzzard. TCH, serves him right. Wah! Grimjow whipped around and caught Wunderweiss by the hand. In your dreams. He flung the blonde Arankar over his shoulder, sending him crashing into a building. Grimjow then opened up his clawed hands. Try these on for size, ha ha ha. A hailstorm of bala crashed into the general area where Wunderweiss had impacted, sending up smoke and dust as the SXTA continued to rain blasts of energy down to the surface. In truth, Wunderweiss was definitely a tough customer. He endured some incredibly powerful kicks and punches, and even negated Grimjow's Gran Rey Sero with a Sero of his own. However, he was nowhere close to the SXTA in terms of speed. That and Wunderweiss had no true memory retention, rationality, or intelligence. Aizen had modified him, from what he recalled, but he couldn't recall for what reason he had done so in such ways. Grimjow stopped his barrage, and stood in midair, waiting. Come on, you bug-toothed bastard. I know you're still done there, wait. A low boom sound alerted Grimjow that Wunderweiss was behind him. He ducked under a blast of purple energy. and decked the younger Arrancar in the gut before snap-kicking him. Wunderweiss flew high into the air before Grimmjow used Sonito to appear above him. The SXTA opened a hand and flexed it, blue beams of light extending from his fingertips. Gua GH. Too slow, Wunderweiss. Wunderweiss was sent crashing down by Grimmjow's Desgaren. The Espada opened his other hand up, cutting his palm open with one of his fingernails. Nothing personal, kid, but you'd be a hassle to deal with later. Wunderweiss tried in vain to remove the solidified claws of energy that pinned him to the ground. He looked up, his eyes widening as he watched a giant ball of blue light forming. W.A. Gran Rey Cerro. Grimmjow retracted his Desgaren as a pillar of blue light shot up into the air, clearing several city blocks in the process. He frowned. TCH, what a disappointment. The kid was modified, but didn't have any real talent. What good is a soldier who can't? The SXTA's words were cut off as an explosion went off in the distance. He turned towards the direction of the sound, only to see Harabel, Stark, and two of those wizards go flying off in different directions. He could see blood staining the skin and clothes of the four, which gave the SXTA a rare case of unease. A feminine voice could be heard behind the SXTA. What the hell did Aizen do to himself? Grimmjow turned to see Chiruchi Thunderwidge, Mosqueda Gantabane, Sakura, Rukia, Izan, and Unohana all floating nearby. The SXTA gave a shrug while looking to Chiruchi. Hell if I know, but I think it has something to do with the Hagoromo. The Hagoromo? Wasn't that sealed inside me? Sakura turned to Rukia. Yeah, that was the name of the orb Aizen took out of you. What's it do, though? It breaks down the border between Hollow and Shinigami. He used it to make modified Arrancar. Chiruchi answered. So, what happened? Mosqueda asked, looking towards Aizen, who in turn appeared to be facing towards Yamamoto. Grimmjow shook his head, not sure, but Aizen just mowed down two of our strongest Espada and those wizard guys. I know that he's powerful, but now, he's changed. I'm not liking it. Unohana decided to speak up. Those who've been injured are grouping together down below a few blocks from here. We should return to them. She turned to the Arrancar. Your name? It's Grimmjow Jigerjax, correct? Yeah. What do you want? Unohana smiled. Grimmjow, I'd like to ask you to keep a lookout for me. While we still have able fighters like Sakura, she is also a healer, and it would help if we had a powerful fighter like yourself to keep guard while we attend to the injured. Are you serious? Look. Retsu Unohana. Right. Look, Unohana, I don't. Please. Unohana closed her eyes, her smile still on her face. Grimmjow felt a sudden wave of dread wash over him. I'm only asking you to simply keep guard over us. We're injured, and cannot fight and heal at the same time. Grimmjow sighed. Fine. Unohana gave a smile. Thank you, Grimmjow-san. A spiritual pressure crashed down upon the group, and Grimmjow's eyes narrowed. You have got to be shitting me, he survived? Wunderweiss's voice could be heard before concrete and steel were sent flying. The modified Arrancar let out a howl as he freed himself from the rubble, and looked around before turning towards Aizen's direction. Wunderweiss looked up to the sky, and let out a deafening cry, and his Ryotsu began to soar to new heights. Okay, I don't recall him ever doing this before. Grimmjow commented, Oi, get back to the group. I need to stop him from doing whatever he's planning on doing. The four Shinigami gave the Arrancar a nod before heading back towards the injured. The SXTA noted that the two Priverin Espada, however, stayed where they were. He said nothing, only giving them a nod before returning his attention to wailing Arrancar. Grimmjow clenched a fist before taking off towards the modified Arrancar, ready to engage him in battle once more. Mosqueda and Chiruchi did likewise, following close behind. Naruto was the first to step out of the Garganta, his eyes blinking out the light of the day as he did so. He drew out his blade, and took in the scenery while Nell and Ulquiorra stepped out behind him. It feels like the air's saturated with Ryotsu. Nell commented as she looked around. There was a large crater in the center of the fake Karakura town, and it appeared to be still smoking from whatever explosion had caused it. Ulquiorra was the first to notice Aizen and Ichigo floating in the S fighting Aizen directly. It looks like we arrived too late to assist Soul Society. Naruto, with the help of his Pesquisa, was able to pick out several of his comrades, as well as most of the Shinigami. Good. It looks like Harabel and Stark are okay. Just lying low for now. I think that one of the Shinigami is healing them, from the looks of things. Chiruchi and Mosqueda are hurt, and so is Grim. So glad you could join us, Naruto-kun. The three Arrancar froze, Naruto feeling a sudden presence weighing down on him. He grit his teeth. That damn Kyoka Suigetsu. Aizen must have set this illusion up on them the moment they entered. How many? Aizen looked to Naruto, and the three finally realized that Aizen had changed drastically. What used to be a man was now a figure covered in a white, cocoon-like skin. But Naruto could tell it was probably as hard as any hierro, if not more so. How many? Do you mean, how many Shinigami and Arrancar came here to try and stop me? Or, how many did I cut down? Or... Bastard. Naruto's blade met air. The media Espada blurring away as a sword grazed his shoulders. Nel and Ulquiorra both backed away before calling forth their resurrección. Naruto raised his blade to do likewise, but felt a hand clasp onto his wrist. That won't be necessary, Naruto-kun. The blonde looked to see Aizen holding his hand in place. Raid Zoros won't be needed right now. I'd rather not deal with you while the other ants are still roaming free. Rest assured, we will fight. Naruto saw Aizen's free hand place something in front of Naruto's chest, right over his hollow hole. A small, purple cube. Naruto's eyes widened. Aizen, you. The cube erupted, tendrils of purple and white light wrapping around him. Naruto had no time to react before he was sucked into the world within Aizen's Kaha negation. The cube slowly shrunk down to size before disappearing. Naruto. Nel uttered, thunderstruck by what had just occurred. Aizen had removed Naruto from the equation, if only temporarily. Still, without him. Ulquiorra's wings spread a bit. Nel, don't lose focus. Right. Nel spun her lance around in her hands before getting into a ready stance. Aizen let out a low chuckle, as though he had heard an amusing joke. You two realize that you're both outclassed by me, do you not? Nel and Ulquiorra gave no response, readying themselves to fight. I see. Ulquiorra, I'm surprised to see you here. Your spear pointed at me of all people. Uzumaki made a valid point. What use is there in serving someone who will dispose of you when the war is over? Aizen hummed and thought, I suppose that is a valid point. Still, the fact that you both know you cannot win against me amuses me to no end. Well, we're not the only ones fighting, you know. Nel added. Aizen needed no explanation to her comment, for a second later Ichigo Kurosaki, visored mask on face, appeared behind him with Tensa Zanjetsu flaring with black and crimson. Getsugat Tenshao. Nel hefted her lance up before throwing. Lanzador Verde. Ulquiorra aimed his right index finger towards Aizen. Cerro Escuras. Beneath his white carapace, Aizen's lips curled into an amused smirk. Fools. All of them.